naked on the floor, hungover, got some number written sloppy on your palm. It's over, yeah, I recognize just who you truly are. A liar, so I set all of your records and your clothes on fire. Like, what's up? I'm gone now. Feeling good, feeling great. I'm a dawn now. Like, bye-bye, I'm set free. Not on my mind, no lie, you're just a bad memory. You're just a bad memory. Just a bad memory.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Take two. For you, it's take one. For us, it's take two, and it's all beautiful. And thank you for coming out to our inaugural live streaming, and it's clearly inaugural. And we're off, but thank you all for joining us. My name is Mike Bauman. I was the gaffer on Birds of Prey, and excited here today because we've got some of the Grip Lighting team here. We have direct and camera. We got director of photography, Matty Libatique.
Hello.
We have key Grip Tana Dubbe.
Hello.
And programmer extraordinaire, Mr. Scott Barnes.
All right.
And just wanted to say hello to everyone who has worked on this thing with us, and some of the other key positions is Kathy Young is the director. Maddie, the DP, production designer, was KK. The A camera operator was Scott Sakamoto. B camera was Chris.
Hair.
Yeah,
RR.
Sorry, Chris. I didn't put your name in there. I was gaffing. Yeah, the camera department gets no respect. Tana was the key grip. Programmer Scott Barnes, and the first AC was Matt Stenerson. There's Matty Libatique in his element. That was his ride to work. That's his driver there.
So thank you, Transpo. Always
yes.
make friends with Transpo.
You always got to make friends with the transportation department. I want to talk a bit about some of the color inspiration because this film has a lot of color in it. And Kathy and Maddie were looking at the work of a photographer named Mary Wolfe. And here's some of her stuff. Yeah, so you and Kathy kind of came across these. Did you bring these to the table, or did she, or how did that all come together?
Well, Kathy brought them to me. Typically when I start with any film, we sort of compare photographs, and Kathy had this, sort of 10 images from Mary Wolfe that all sort of spoke to the palette she was looking for. But you can see, if you look at the photographs, there's a lot of purples and magentas, pinks, obviously reds in there. And, she was looking for something that would sort of represent the grit of our version of Gotham, and also kind of give a empowering palette with a feminine bend. So I think it was successful. It was once we sort of settled on it as a team visually with KK Barrett, the production designer, and Kathy as well, we basically, I sort of turned it over to you guys. I always, early in prep, I thought we were going to do a lot of it in the grade, given some of the locations. But we, because we have the benefit of today's LED technology, we were able to actually control much of it ourselves. And which is an interesting thing, because a lot of the rigs that we have in the movie were designed so that we can control this color. And so, I don't know the exact percentage, but let's just say that we could control a lot more than I anticipated when we were getting into it. So, that sort of started to fall into the execution. And what we did was, just a general philosophy, because Kathy was interested in moving the camera a lot and actually doing things in longer takes, and, just sort of crafting the film with a purpose. We had to keep the lighting kind of broad. And so that was the challenge when we were designing the rigs. When you guys designed every rig and every set, I think it was, the main thing was to keep the lighting as broad as possible, and we would augment our tighter coverage. But controlling palette, and then controlling the quality of light, and getting distance and throw, and then having that work for us and of course the use of smoke was there was a cocktail really for everything we did.
Yeah, it's definitely something that like our workflow was interesting. I know, we did a lot of testing, and certainly, I know you weren't doing a lot of like, color grading on the set. We were doing most of that all, getting it all into the camera, where we'd be changing the white point on the camera. And a lot of our, pretty much every source we used was LED, and there's a lot of moving color around based off of the white point of the camera. Hey, let's try this. Let's put the camera at 4,000 and put the sky panels at 10,000 and things like that. So it was a lot about working very closely with Scott. His console was set up pretty much right next to Mike Kowalczyk, the DIT setup, and so we could all communicate, closely depending on what was going on. And then all over HME also. It
was a cinematography situation room is what it was.
Yeah. And we also
whispering.
Yeah, constantly. And then also we did a lot of cues on this thing. I mean, it was filled with cues based off of camera movement and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on in all that. I think our first just wanted to talk a bit data and some of the networking we were doing on the show. I mean, it was all about nodes and data, and yes, sausage. Exactly. This is lighting sausage, folks. This is the ugly part that happens before it turns beautiful. And this is the running HogNet and FixtureNet networks throughout the entire set, and then stepping it out into DMX. That's some of the hardware that made the magic happen, and it got ugly at times, but it was you needed to have as much versatility as possible in our network, because we were adding a lot of new things, moving fixtures around, a lot of effects, a lot of multi-pixel type of sources. So there's a lot of network craziness going on, and we had a very good data team who was really had their hands full working with wired and wireless systems throughout the show. First set I want to talk about is the Black Mass Club, and this was KK coming out of the gate. This is the first set we shot in the film, and had a lot of interesting challenges to it. This was his conceptual art for the project. What I thought it was interesting is how with the walls, just to start with the walls, and the fact that he had that vacuum formed gold overlays on the walls, which was great texture. Throughout the entire thing. It was really clever.
He did a great job of giving every angle, every frame that you set up in that space had a highlight and depth, because of how clever he was with the walls, I think, in that space.
Yeah, tons of reflective surfaces, whether in the set decoration and in the floor. Really just lots to look at different directions. And this was some of, so we had the set in SketchUp that we could move around and find angles. And I know, you and Tana were always in there trying to, look at potential camera angles and what we had to have ready equipment wise for that. These are some of the screen grabs from some of the construction. KK had these two giant hands on set. Tana, did you ever know what the motivation was for the hands? I can't remember how those ended up there.
I always thought it was a bit of a peekaboo,
Oh, yes, with the eyes. Yes.
Yeah, because there's the eyes there.
Yeah. And so, just through SketchUp doing some different angles.
It was a design thing, Mike. I think, if you go forward to the end of the film into the funhouse, I think the oversized feminine body parts was kind of a theme. Right. Yes. And those hands were the beginning of it, because that's where we started.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting too. That set actually is a good example for us, is we had to, in the screenplay, we had to deal with 3 different looks. So once our rig went in, we had to accommodate all of those things. We moved a few things. Like if you look at that light there, we actually had to get the right position for that thing. And we didn't know until we started to actually get to pre-light it, that we didn't quite have a light in the right place. But it was also because we were sharing space with so many other things, as I remember, and that light had to be placed there after the pre-rig.
Yeah, because we did have 3 looks for this space. We shot it over, I think, over the course of 5 days, and it was we had the performance lift with Black Canary on stage and all of that. Then we had the general club look. We actually had 4 looks because then we had the interrogation scene that happens with her with Roman Sionis, and then the
Marilyn Monroe.
Marilyn Monroe dream dance sequence. That's right. But what I always thought was great about how KK designed this is there was always something going on in the background to shoot into, and like even in the and the rig had to have, we had to put one rig in that could work for all these different looks.
That light right there, that was a P, what was it, a P10?
The P10, right, Scott? Was that the P10?
Yeah.
Your mic is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
P10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That was the first
I'd
time
never
we
seen that
used
light
P10.
before.
We never used it. I'd never used it before. That was the first time for me too.
Why did we put it in there? I mean, it worked great. But why would
Well, I mean, we tried it in our camera test, and it was just a nice punchy light.
Yeah, that's right. And I remember it being a little noisy. That was the only one that Steve was upset about. But
he
it was
never
great.
complains.
And he never complains. Yes, he never complains.
I thought we made a lot of decisions about a lot of things during the camera test. Camera tests seemed to be a lot of things were dealt with there that we pretty much ended up doing when we actually shot them.
Well, but that's because we talked about it ad nauseum, because we that's the other thing. It's like for anybody who's trying to figure out how to take on their show, you got to get prepared for your test.
Yeah.
Because if you don't prepare for your test, you're not going to do any research and development for what you're going to implement on the day. And then we work really hard. And we discuss, it's almost like we're prepping our tests as we're prepping the film so that we could actually get valuable information from it. And a lot on this movie had to do with units and what kind of lights we're using.
And a lot of new gear comes out constantly.
Yeah.
Look at the stuff.
Yeah.
Doing good on the test gives you a little rope to play with too. You present yourself and you say, "Hey, man, we can do it."
Well, plus it introduces other problems that we have to sort of solve from a grip standpoint, from an electric standpoint, from a camera standpoint.
Yeah, there's a lot of good. Those tests are, we generally testing is absolutely critical to, and on a film like this, it was even more so, just because we were trying to figure out things with color palette and workflow. I remember that a lot of interactive light. We had that. We had set up all those color forces on the stage for the test for the lighthouse effect, and in fact, I think that was the camera test that they used for the initial trailer they released. I think it was when they pushed out a little pre-trailer.
That's right. That teaser was camera test.
Yeah,
it's because of the light cues. It's because of the light cues.
Yeah, right.
No, seriously. It was for those people who don't know out there, the 4 of us have worked together since probably the 90s. That seems like a long time ago. But I remember we did a film called The Number 23, directed by Joel Schumacher, and it was the first time we did a test where we were doing light cues for every actor. And back then it was variacs and switching things on and off. And there's a minimal dimmer board situations, but basically you're just dimming or a tungsten light and panning in an HMI. But now it's just evolved into this thing where we design a rig from different angles, different color. And then, Scott, what would you say? By the time we're done, we've done 22 cues.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You mean in a day? Oh, yeah.
Well, on a shot, like by the time we start getting going on a test and we learn something, we see something we like, we end up changing that cue, naming that cue, and then by the time you're done, we've tested, maybe 22 different cues or 25 cues.
Definitely.
Yeah. The actors have no idea when they walk in there. They go through that many lighting setups.
Yeah, and it's definitely finding different qualities of light that work better for different actors. And it's like on the test, we're looking at like wardrobe options and props and things like this to see, oh, does this color, like a lot of times the costume designer will be in there. Hey, this is, especially on this job, there's, you had a lot of there was such a wide variety of costumes for certain characters, and just what's the material like, what's the reflectivity of the material, how dark is it, how light is it, all those kind of things, which are really, you want to get extensive testing is great for optimal success. Yeah. It
also brings our department in line with, the people who've been there prepping the movie in their own way, between the production designer, the prop man, costume designer, all these people who've been prepping the movie in a different way from us, who've been there longer. They've been there longer than me. And it's the only time we all get to connect. And then after that, everybody goes their separate ways while we go into production.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the first time where you get all the ingredients that everyone's been working on in the test. You get all the ingredients that everybody's been working on, or the ideas, and you're making the cake for the first time. And it might not be the right cake, but you're getting something together in the chemicals and just seeing what happens. And, a lot of times it works. Sometimes you're like, oh boy, that idea just did not work at all. And you can adjust.
Sometimes and sometimes they whisper behind your back at the screening.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Jake, I think we could play our first clip, which is a clip of the club.
It was time for Gotham.
Somebody said the number 23 touches good cues
so I
for
really
happy
put myself out there.
See, this is when you work together for a long time.
I wasn't there.
God damn it! Sit the fuck
Where the
down.
fuck were you?
What?
I said,
On another show, Matty.
sit your skinny ass down,
So,
dumb slut.
they didn't do superhero movies back then.
Yeah.
He was doing Dream Girl.
A lot of what's going on here in the scene is just, club life, and you're just seeing all of the different. The fact is that, the way KK designed the set, we've got a lot to look into. There's a lot of, there's always something lit in the background, which was really great. And, including, after she breaks the driver's legs, now all of a sudden the mirror ball turns on and all this kind of stuff.
That was my drive.
And so it's definitely
Consider him fired.
just in that scene alone, there was just so many cues that would happen, with multiple cameras going and things like this.
This is my favorite one. I like this one. Ding, ding.
Yeah.
Not tonight.
Yeah. For my friends, yes, yeah. No, it's good stuff, and
Do give the Joker my best.
certainly something
Okay,
that
fine. So I hadn't told people about.
just lots going on. I mean, mirror balls. I didn't think I've ever used that many mirror balls in a movie, and there's some sets that we just kept. They were happy accidents.
I do like a bit of disco.
Yeah, and with KK, his only thing on this was I think he really hates magenta, and it was like get that that wasn't his magenta wasn't his cup of tea. Here's the plot for we got the next thing is the plot for that kind of came out of this as we were designing kind of the lighting rig for it. And so we had a lot of soft top light mixed with movers for hard light, and then sky panels. Everything was, everything in this rig was LED except for some incandescent accents. But 99% of this was all LED. And so we had a lot of sky panels in all sizes. We had our P10 that we were talking about earlier. We used the high-end system Soliframe 3000s in their theaters as our main primary mover, and then some light gear light boxes as ambient, and then the Chroma Q Color Force 72s and 48s, which were great workhorses for this entire show.
They're on every movie.
Yeah. It's like this list of stuff right now here, this is pretty much, this and some other stuff that we had in there, like Astera tubes and things like that. Those are, those are a good general. You got hard light, you got soft light, you've got multicolor stuff, you've got everything. And so what generally happens is after, Maddie and I have the workflow for us is kind of like Maddie and I have some conversations about stuff, and I'll just start sketching some stuff out. And I turn over to Scott, and he draws it in Vectorworks to create how the light is going to be laid out for everything. And then we make adjustments, as, figuring out, oh, maybe we should move this or move that. And we can do, you can move around virtually with the camera to also look at things if lights are too high or too low. But then eventually it gets turned over to the data team and the rigging crew, and then they end up this is where the rubber meets the road, and they're putting all of the different numbers in and assigning everything for the data. And one of these numbers is wrong, the light doesn't work. So it's really,
well, somebody on this chat actually gets really pissed off when that happens.
I don't even know who that could be.
Tana.
Yeah, Tana. Tana gets upset when the numbering's wrong.
Yeah, Jared Wellman and Jason Young and their team did a bang up job.
I mean, the other step though that happens is that same, once Barnes is done with it, we got to calculate weights, and we got to figure out the rigging of it. So Tana and Charlie Gilliland, our rigging grip, take it over and figure out how to implement it from a mechanical standpoint. But then I there's usually a thing that happens to me where I have to, maybe 2 days before the rig's done, I remember I should probably go check to make sure that crane shot's not going to be obstructed, or this is, and then usually I make people do work that they shouldn't have had to do if I just got there a week earlier.
Yeah, well, it happens. I mean, and the other thing is like, look, this is the first set of the show, and this is the set that everybody has plenty of time to focus on because it's the first one of the movie. So lots of time. And I was actually, in hindsight, it was a good call that this was the first set, because there's so many little details to it that the fixtures department did. And just to kind of break down that, yeah. And I was gonna say that just to break down, kind of some of the hierarchy. So there's obviously the cinematographer, myself, the gaffer, and the key grip. We work together under him with the first AC and the rest of the camera department. And then Scott, the programmer, he's working for, he works in the lighting department. He does all the plotting and all that. And then we also have we have a rigging crew, which is a rigging grip, and a rigging gaffer and their team. So they're basically putting everything ahead of us and pulling it out behind us. And within them, they have like a data team. There's a fixtures team, which will show some of their work later. And all of these, this is all part of the, the entire grip and lighting experience. And it's a lot, there's a lot going on. And like Maddie had said earlier, on a rig like this, you have to figure out weight calculations, and there's just, there's a ton. So we started with this when they were still building the set, putting in, because things had to go in. It's kind of like building a sandwich. I think that's the phrase you used, Tana. And, it's like we've got to put things in before they can put the floor in or before set dressing comes in. So, we started to put the lights in early and get them hung and, hanging. And basically, this is just creating, putting in practice what we did on the plot. And so these soft boxes were a kind of a general ambience, and then the moving lights were designed to do highlights and things like that. So there's a lot of versatility in this rig. We had the prerequisite black mirror ball, which was I think, did we have a black one and a silver one? I can't remember.
Yeah,
we had one.
Yeah, we did.
Because the black one doesn't really put out too much reflection.
Hey, Mike.
Cool,
Hey, yeah. Mike, I'm just going to chime in because I saw some of the questions that people were supposed to about the plotting and stuff. So the workflow, for those who are interested, the workflow is, like Mike said, we chicken scratch notes between Mike and Maddie and Tana. That comes to me. I'll take it into Vectorworks. I work with them and art department. So I get drawings and models and stuff from art department, and I take everything and put it in Vectorworks. Usually I'll redraw everything. And then depending on how much time I have will vary as far as how much detail I put into it. This set obviously was the first one that we did, so I had a lot of time to put a lot of detail into it. And then those plots will, like via some sort of thing like Slack or whatever, we'll send back to Maddie and Mike and Tana. They'll all review it. Notes will come back. I'll make changes and stuff. Once we kind of got all that down, then the plot is shared. We use project sharing on Vectorworks, and that is shared with Jared and his guys, and they will start working out numbering as far as data. as far as actual rigging plots go. But then the other thing that the plots are used for, not only just for rigging plots, is for fixture plotting. And then also those final plots will go back to Matty and Mike to have on set so they can call out numbers. So the plots, they go off on a lot of different paths. They're communicating for rigging, they're communicating for fixtures, they're communicating for just generic call outs for when we start shooting. So that's sort of the workflow.
Yeah, that's and it is that's tried and true over years of refining it, because the creative decisions want to pass. You want to make sure they're being distributed properly, because you also especially on a project like this, in a lot of these larger movies, you're dealing with a second unit, you might be dealing with a visual effects unit, you might be dealing with splinter units, and so these are folks who just might be coming in for a week or something to do to finish up some stuff on a set that we had shot and we had to go because of schedule. And so it's really important that they can just walk into an environment and here's the notes, here's how it is, and we've got visual continuity across the board for everyone. So that's a lot, communicating with second unit and things like that. There's a lot of the moving parts to it. As we're going down the line here, we started to put in. They started to attach like the gold walls and things like that. The boxes overhead. We put some skirts on them and things like that. Some homemade egg crates. This shot here is not too far unlike what the previs that in SketchUp. We've got a very reflective floor. The stairs were kind of interesting, and this was Phil Abeda, who did our fixtures work, and his team did a fantastic job on this. They, all those stairs, the front faces of them are all multicolor. This set, they had a lot of work to do. The light wells that were in between each of those circular booths, those were all 6-color Cine 6 light ribbon. And then I remember, I think at some point during our discussions, we added that strip under the hands to that wasn't in the original design. I think we added that there because we wanted to get that highlight in there or something like that. Yeah. And that's just,
and that was you had to decide exactly where to put it before you pull out the saw.
That's right. And, the stage had a lot of stuff that had to go on. Again, we hung a perimeter of color force, which are great. So we can make them white light, or we can make them any color, we can chase them. And those we needed to have in there for the dance sequence, the Marilyn Monroe dance sequence. But yeah, this is just, again, a lot of color in the palette. And so, and then I think we did at least one day of pre-lighting in here, maybe a little bit more.
We did one day.
Yeah, we have the luxury. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just have some really bad pictures of it because I think we had some stand-ins in and we were pre-lighting it. It was like probably the most prepared we were on the whole show because it was up first. Yep. But it was 7 days of shooting, so 7 or 8 days of shooting, coming in and out of it, and 3 different looks. So I think it warranted that much preparation. The thing about that trough that lights the hands, I remember you kept reminding me to go and check where the light was, and we'd have to put a tube under there and take a look in the stair that was lighting it up and seeing where exactly are they going to cut this trough. And one thing I wanted to mention is that in this sort of size of filmmaking and creating these rigs, a lot of people who are on this right now know this, but those of you who haven't done this size of movie and will embark on that at some point, you need to become friends with construction. You need to have a great relationship with your art director. You need, or whoever is in charge. In many cases, one art director is in charge of one set and another art director is in charge of another. If you have a great relationship and a collaborative relationship with these people, then it makes it so much easier, because if you do have a problem, you don't complain about it, you address it right away. And that is a case in point of how to deal with that. We want those hands to look as best as they can possibly look, but still accommodate a camera that moves around without a unit on the floor. So how do we do that? We had to cut a trough into their set, but I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we decided to use Milkplex, but use N6 or N9 so that when the light was off, you wouldn't really see it. And those are the discussions that you have with art departments that are crucial to being successful when you're doing something that has the benefit of this kind of rigging. But, you know, it sounds like a very luxurious thing, but when the ask is as big as it is on these kind of movies, you'll see that it's necessary.
Yeah, you can't. This is really so much of a team effort. This whole process is because, you know, I mean, you know, and it is, you're absolutely right. It's like working with the art department, working with the production designer, and KK is incredibly creative. It was really great to be able to dialogue with him and Kazra, who is I think he was the main art director.
Yeah. And
they brought a lot to the table, and they had a lot of interesting ideas, and we could talk about like, hey, you know, we got to figure out a way to get some light in here, and how are we going to do this? And well, what if we did this, or what if we did this, or what if we made this more reflective, or something like that. And there's a lot of little things like that, you know, like when you look at, like, you know, going back to these frames, when you look at them, it's like there's something in the background there, you know, then that saves you time on the day too, because we're not trying to relight and put stuff back there. This is like, you know, the set itself has a lot going on, so you can get, you know, like this. This is an example here. This bar, and we're talking about this a bit, but the bar has a. And Jake, if we could play that bar clip. So one of the things that I know you and Kathy had talked about was this Movi shot, and it was one of the reasons we didn't shoot film. We shot digital instead of shooting film, and it's was to be able to do this shot we're about to show the clip of, which is, you know, being able to walk through this entire set and see it with handoffs and things like this and all this kind of stuff going on. Oh, whoops, not the bar clip. I already gave him the wrong one. Maybe this is it. Well, we can start with this one. This is actually good, which is this, you know, this clip is, you know, because we've lit the bar so much and the shelves behind it and everything, so that when we're doing this scene, there's, you know, they're getting their primary light source from the bar from below, and then we were just augmenting with some stuff around the eyes and setting some levels in the background. And it really allowed for us to run multiple cameras and things like that. And there's like, when we're on this, you know, the shot of them through the front of the bar looking towards the stage, there's like lots of stuff going on back there. And this is where a relationship with production designer and all that is so critical. You know, for this to be just successful visually. Because I think when we were shooting this, we were just maybe adding, I think we had a couple of Asteras that we were adding, and you know, it wasn't too much. I mean, a lot of it was just coming from the bar and everything that Phil had built into it.
But I think, didn't we have to actually move some of those lights so that they weren't so underneath them? We had to pull them back. Or I think we made that decision after we looked at it. We ended up pulling everything back so they're a little further away from the position. I mean, it's stuff like that you just sort of have to react to, and then have the ability to shift it around.
Yeah, you're right, because we would move them around just to make sure it was the most pleasing on their face from below, and it wasn't just like a horror movie light. But you know, like when you do this one close up of Harley Quinn looking into the bar, and it's great because with the shelves lit, it's like there's a lot of you know, good stuff happening there. And I mean, it also helps that when you're a lead actress, I guess, has some you know, her skin tones.
Is Margot Robbie?
Yeah. So she looks great, and then she happens to be wearing you know, makeup that is beneficial for reflectivity.
Taking the job comes with a card that says, "Don't fuck this up." Yes,
exactly.
You know, that shot of her there, that close up right there. I remember struggling with how to fill that. You remember that? We tried one of the boxes below, and then Tana, didn't we have to tilt that box to see if we can get it directed towards her? And then finally, we just went old school and put a light on the stand. I'm like, what idiots?
Yeah, I know. You know, you get so in love with the whole thing, and but like this, yeah, exactly. So like, you know, the bar here, just to go back to the bar shot, the bar has LED, you know, around the perimeter, and then you've got stuff. We have these RGB daylight little pucks inside there that we just moved around as necessary, and then lit shelving. So with the back wall from below being lit also. And so there's just a ton of stuff. So this, like you're talking about, this close up here, I mean, our hardest struggle is figuring out how to fill her because the background already had like, there's stuff going on and things like that. And this shot too is like, again, like what I thought was interesting about this is that behind Zaz's head, is the ceiling, which has got that. I remember talking to KK. We were talking to KK about how much reflectivity to put in the ceiling when they did the paint. And that's, again, working with the construction department, because it catches all that stuff from the shelves. And, there's highlights back there. And then there's a practical that's out of focus right above his head there, which was built into the set also. I think play the clip.
On-set painters.
On-set painters.
Critical.
Oh, my God.
And no one ever dared to object.
Critical. This next clip, I think, is the clip where we took the movie and had Tana. This is one where you guys killed it, and what Willie was in costume and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Let's see if you can pick him out. There he is.
Texture lighting.
Yeah. And we did probably 15 takes of this, and but this is an all-in-one shot, and she's moving around and landing in different positions, and the camera comes over, and then she runs in, and she's in this thing, where she's talking to the statue, and then, she put the puke in her mouth, and so that when she could turn around, it enters frame, and then throws up in this lady's purse, and we did like 15 takes or something of that. I mean, it was a lot going on.
Maybe more.
Yeah, and
maybe more.
Yeah.
There was two good ones. I remember 2 good takes out of that.
Yeah, and when you look at like this is here. This is working with the fixtures department. Like this light source that's coming from below on her. Let's see. Hopefully, is let's see. The light source.
You're talking about the statue?
Yeah, at the statue. That's that was a custom thing that the fixtures department has going on. I mean, Tana, when you guys were doing this, what when you guys were, I guess Maddie and Tana, this is kind of a question for you, like designing the shot, because there's Willie in the background, the guy who's handed the movie, but this was all movie, right?
All movie.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, is anybody over there? I think it might have been the Ronin.
It was a Ronin, Maddie.
It was a Ronin.
I think we were in Ronin mode then.
It was a Ronin, and it was it was a Mini, Alexa Mini, and the I think there was, I'm trying to count one. Okay, there's a handoff off the bar, across the bar. There's another handoff over the booth, and what we're looking at right now, there's a handoff as we pass the statue to Willie here. That's our third handoff. And I believe there's a 4th handoff around the time of her vomiting. And I think that's it. I think Chris Hare took it at the very end. After he took it from Willie, as I recall, Tana.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I'm not sure who took it first. Mango took it first. I don't really know the order. We had literally 4 people operating the shop. With Scott Sakamoto on the wheels.
And then you've got, like, I don't know, there's probably 80 or 100 background in here too. And it's, so it's.
And there's a lot of these.
Hot potato.
I just say, somebody asked a question earlier here on YouTube. They said that how often do we know all the shots, or how many of the shots do we know of going into a set? And the question is not that many, to be honest with you. There's an idea, and maybe there's a storyboard, but typically what I do is I take the hardest shot and we figure out our lighting plan based on that. So we knew we had to do that. We knew we had to do a shot going from behind the stage, upstage to downstage, around Canary, and all the way to Roman, and we knew, and those are, the longer moving shots were going to be the toughest ones. So how can our rig accommodate it? Is kind of how we typically approach it every time. And then if you look at this single shot here, I don't know. I wish we still had the list of how many cues there were, because we invent cues in between cues as we go along. We do 15 to 20 takes. It might start off with 6 cues and end with 20.
Yeah. Hey, I was going to ask Tana. I mean, like, speaking of camera movement, is just like you've done more movies with Matty than I have, and even though we've worked together for so long, I was just curious, like, what's normally your like, you guys just finished the prom. What did you have as like, what's your general camera support package that you have like on a show with Matty?
Oh,
Crane, obviously, Moby.
a lot of small sort of stuff that can go in a lot of different directions too. Like if you have just a lot of tools that we can make something, because Matty likes to create, he comes up with a shot and then doesn't really have a platform. And so we have to be, it's not really just your standard operating stuff. It's more like a bag of tricks.
Yeah.
And these kind of shots, like right here, like this hot potato shot, the beauty of that, obviously it's a neat looking shot, but it's an all skate. Everyone is collaborating between you guys with the cues and the lighting and us with the camera. And I think those kind of things really, for one, they make your day a lot more enjoyable and incorporates everybody. Everybody's brains are working. I mean, that's the way to be.
Yeah. What was fun about this job is there was a lot of all-in-ones, it wasn't like this kind of shot and some stuff later we have in the Italian restaurant and things that were really interesting. I just, as a nod to our fixtures team, like in that light well that she's getting lit with, I mean, they would, Phil and his guys would be working with the art department to, custom fab stuff that would go into these locations and all these set pieces. And this was a lot of what this particular set was for them, so we could have, some close-ups and things, and again, have lit things in the frame. And that is all, fixtures department is another just amazing asset for kind of how movies get made now. They used to all just be about light bulbs and, what size practicals you need in a thing. And now it is their job, and especially it has become so much more critical to, adding stuff into the set and photography and all that. And Phil really on this, in some of the subsequent sets, really, the size of his sphere is massive. It's really impressive.
Those guys are amazing. I mean, and Phil's right at the very top. He's in the top 2 or 3 easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you could jump on that segue. You could jump right into the carousel because the guy. I mean, I didn't know till the other day that those weren't real globes, that he had to make each one.
Oh yeah. I'll get to that. It's absolutely. And I mean, this is the kind of work they were putting in, and it is it's impressive. And again, like the numbering, everything, they, on top of that, they're just running tons of, wire everywhere to get all this going. And it's all got to be done correctly. Otherwise, if we, Scott sends a DMX signal to something at 6 colors and it's not coming out in the color we want, there's a ton of moving parts. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was just going to elaborate a little bit on what you said about the fixtures department. For those who are new to the business or whatever, practicals was the term years and years ago, back when it was just dimmers and it was a table lamp or a wall sconce or a can light. And they went on dimmers. That was it. And there's maybe like 1 or 2 people that did that. And they worked with art department. The set decorators would come in and throw a sconce on. And this still happens. But on top of that, now the practicals department has evolved into this fixture manufacturing organization.
Custom manufacturing.
That they deal with, because they're not just dealing with, what Matty and Mike want. They're not dealing with what the Gaffer and the DP want. They got the art department in their ear as well. And so now every set now has to have some sort of ribbon incorporated into it. It has to have trim in it. The bar has to have LED in it. The sconce has to have LED in it. Costumes have to have LED in it, or props have to have LED in it. So now they're dealing with props, they're dealing with costumes, they're dealing with art department, they're dealing with the DP. I mean, that's a lot of people that one department is dealing with, and the requests are coming from left and right. It's like, build me 1,000 of these, retrofit 100 of those. It's incredible. And now that department's got from 1 or 2 people to now it's like dozens sometimes. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Like little things like this. Like, for example, we had this pair of hands in an alleyway that needed to be lit up, and it kind of kept the hand through the eye motif. And Phil's like, I got to go online and find out what it is. And so he found out, what he could hide behind it, because he's, it's kind of, this is the design. What can we do? And so he's, he comes up, he finds a battery solution that can fit back there with a wireless solution that can fit back there. And it's just an incredible amount of research he does to create this, which is just like one visual element of a bunch that's happening. And it's really a very unique department, because like you said, Scott, they're stretched across. They're working with so many different areas of the production.
Some of the requests they get are absolutely insane. I walk into their area sometime and I'm like, what are you guys working on? And I go, oh, guess what? By Monday, we got to do 1,000 of these strip lights for art department to put into the ceilings. I'm like, I don't even know how you're going to do that, man. I mean, they're soldering like around the clock sometimes. It's crazy.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, as art departments, so don't you think that as art departments get used to them, and they will give them a little more lead time than they have been, because they understand that these things, like we've slowly understood, like a art department schedule, they're going to have to start to understand what a schedule is for fixtures.
Sure.
Or else the manpower is going to go out of control. It's just one of those. It's a kind of a newer thing, I think, in the last few years.
Yeah, definitely. Like between fixtures and data are the two new space. Go ahead, Scott.
The experienced production teams out there, UPMs and art directors and what they know, and they compensate for that too. But every once in a while, you run into some people who aren't familiar with it, and so when they're told that's going to take how long or that's going to take how much money, it's just like, yeah, this is kind of how it is now. This is if you want this is what it's going to take. Yeah,
this is one of those those great conversations that you always have in the area of budget. Yep.
You could say the same thing is happening with just data in general, like consoles on set. And, I mean, I used to be something that just happened every once in a while. Now it's like the entire show. So it's the same thing. It's like the whole new technology thing is just, it's in infancy right now, basically.
I was just going to hit a couple questions and Jake, if you want to, get ready with the performance clip. I'm sorry. Someone's asking what color temperature for the scene of this bar. I think we were at around 4,000, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, typically around 4,000.
On the camera.
On this film, 4,000 always allowed us to, run red cold color temperatures and very warm color temperatures, and have them actually have some color separation. So somewhere 4,000, 4,500.
Well, here's a good question. Okay. About talking about the color coming, because we have so much LED color options. How big is the role of the DIT in terms of color control, and how much approaches change with HDR? Well, that's its own session.
I don't do a lot of color.
Go ahead.
I don't do a lot of grading. I mean, I don't do a lot of grading on set. I just once we pick a lot at the top of the show, I pretty much stick to it, and then light like we were lighting, try to light it as like we were lighting film stocks.
Yeah.
And or else I think for me it's just a rabbit hole. I end up chasing everything. Whereas I mean, we still use light meters, Mike, and the only reason people ask me why do you still use a light meter, it's like it has nothing to do with the lens. It's just so we don't forget in coverage where we were on the second shot.
It's our continuity.
Exactly.
So
Absolutely.
I don't, as far as chasing color, we chase color with our lighting. We chase color with our color temperature, but I don't chase it on the grade. I don't chase it on set with live grade, and I don't chase it on set with resolve. It just it has to come in that way and then get tweaked in the grade for dailies, but you got to keep it kind of simple.
Jake, if you could play that clip again. I think we were talking over it. I think this is a performance clip of Black Canary singing, and it's just kind of a case of like multiple cues, trying to behave seamlessly.
I'm seeing a different thing, Mike. Oh, maybe. There it is. There it is.
There it was. For a second.
Oh, we got the dance sequence. This is good. Okay. Am I right? That's what everybody's seeing?
No, we're seeing the oneer again.
Yeah.
her drinking and puking.
Mike, which scene do you want? Because we're a little. I have. You want the dance sequence, the club dance sequence? Is that what you want?
Let me see here. If we have the clip of the
beginning of the Marilyn Monroe, isn't it?
Yeah, we could do the dance. Is the
that?
Yeah, is that the Marilyn Monroe dance sequence, which I think is yeah. If you want to play that clip. But one of the like this this sequence here. This is she's getting interrogated, and we'll talk about the interrogation look. But then, great idea. I'm assuming it's Kathy's or her and the screenwriter about having a full, like Marilyn Monroe dance sequence with everything going on. And so we went off. We had shot the club, and then we went to another stage for a couple of days to shoot some apartment interior, and then the choreographer. And they caught on to us. Am I seeing what I'm saying? What happened?
Oh, we got bounced.
Well,
we do stills, right?
Yeah. No, we got a lot going on. This is good to know. This is our first one. So apparently our good friends at Warner Brothers, if we're going to talk about corporate overlords, that's it for the live clip section of the show. So we're going to go with our own collection of stills and behind the scenes. I guess we won't be giving out that coupon at the end of the day for a discounted rate for purchasing Birds of Prey. Anyway, we just wanted to talk about like some of this performance and, how this was just lots and lots of cues here to just for the simple thing of coming in behind her and when Black Canary is singing and then coming around to the front. A lot of moving parts on that. And, a lot of these shots, it was, I remember you, Matty, you, myself, Tana, and Scott, it was, constantly making adjustments and just making it better per take.
It was the airspace was so overloaded. If you wanted to go up or down with any of that truss, you had to have a super long shepherd's hook to breast something aside. What was perfectly aligned on Barnes' first plots. By the time you ended up, it was, a little bit more organic.
Yeah. Reality sets in when you actually have to.
Reality sets in. Yeah.
Well, we changed stuff. I mean, there's in that photo you just had up there. You look, we reoriented that 2x8, right?
Yeah.
We reoriented that to face her. And I recall, when we were close to her, the quality of light wanted to be less spotlight and more of a soft light. So we actually crossfaded between that light mat up there to the spot when we were further away. So, it's stuff like that where we cheat the quality of light in and close, and then as we move away from them, we find a place to transition and hide a transition of light for a different quality.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the set is that's the thing too. It's like none of what we're doing is set in stone. And that's part of why the data team and the rigging team and Mike Bonneau, who's the rigging gaffer on this, did a great job because we have to have the versatility to be able to, hey, let's drop that thing in on the motors, pull it down, let's put it over here on the floor. Because that's the light we need now. The way the network is set up, you have to have accommodations. So if that's going to come down, you got a place to plug it in and it can go right back onto Scott's control. And, because we're running multiple universes in this space. So we had, when we did the dance number, we put a couple of those 2x8s on the floor here. And
look at the picture of Bogdan.
Yeah, that's Bogdan. That's right. Legend. This is what, a 50-foot techno, I think, or something? Not techno. Oh my God, he would kill me if I said that.
I mean, look, you could see what's up there right now. And somebody was asking a question about how we got the color on that Marilyn Monroe thing. And there's sky panels used as backlights, but there's also the color forces that are rimming the set. And I think that was, Scott, was that your idea to put those down there like that? Because those did most of the lion's share of that set when it came to the Monroe.
For washing the walls, color forces, I don't know if I suggest it. I mean, color forces are designed for that, really. I mean, they're psych lights, basically. They're for backgrounds and stuff. I think those Those sky panels, though, we originally plotted those on a truss behind the wall. And I think at one point while we were filming, you wanted them closer to be more down. And also I think maybe brighter. Was that another reason? So we ended up moving them. They're actually rigged to the front face of the truss that the color forces are on. I believe that's right.
Yeah, no, that's correct. That for an area of that set that has no reflective walls, was really a box. There was it was very labor intensive. And that was another thing, that where the light ended up wanting to be was nowhere near we had originally thought, so you have some bones in the deep background that weren't being used, and everything is just clustered right on that, basically on the cusp.
Well, you can see how they're all focused, right? And there's 2 of them on. We basically, didn't we put crates on all of them? Because we just, when they were behind the set, they were just too broad and they were lighting up too much stuff. So we just used 1 or 2 units at a time, depending on our angle and cues, and had them focus a little bit better. So that's why we brought them forward.
And better helped and hurt us too when we really wanted to drive stuff. So.
And then we left that gap in the middle there for the P10, and I think a 3000 as well.
Yeah,
that truss had a lot of light on it.
Yeah, that was
going up.
Charlie was pulling his hair out on that one. That was totally overloaded.
And somebody had the bright idea of putting the back wall on motors.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Another
idea. That's right, because we needed it. Yeah, because he needed the wall out for the opening shot on Canary from behind. Yeah. Oh my God. There was a lot. I remember you were right, Tana. There's not a lot of real estate up there. It was packed house.
No.
But the question, just to answer that guy's question, all the color was coming from the light. So the combination of sky panels and the color forces created the color. Working at a color like red, there's not going to be a lot of variation in between the quality of the LEDs, but
well, the wall was painted red too. That kind of made it hard to use other colors.
Very true.
KK.
But it looked good.
Yeah, that's KK saying this is how I want this to look too. Kind of like how we throw down colors in lights in reality versus waiting for somebody to do it later. It's like you putting your mark down. This is what I want.
And which I respect him for, because that's what makes him great.
Yeah, no, another thing we had to do in this space was create this interrogation look, which I think I foolishly thought we'd be able to play a video of it, but now hopefully I have enough clips in here. But it was, it's a complete 180 in the look of the club. Turn everything else off. We turned on the P10. I think we tried a few different things, but the P10 was fantastic. And then I remember for this close-up of her, we took a DS1, a digital Sputnik DS1, and just put it back there and just kind of move it a little left, right there, type of thing, just to get the right amount of flare in the shot.
Oh wow, DS1! A little shout out to Sputnik.
Sputnik, that's right. This is generally like what one of our trusses look like, with just movers and sky panels, and then sometimes we'd also have on here, chroma key color force on top of it, and so. We pretty much use for this job, we use the SolarFrame 3000s, the high fidelity engine, because so we get really full spectrum. They make it with 2 different types of engines, an ultra bright and a high fidelity. And for cinema use, the high fidelity is better. You get better color rendition. And then the SolarFrame Theater, is a light that has no fan in it. So the sound department loves that light. And, you can put that thing, right next to the actor off camera and you won't hear a thing, if you're, provided you're not like, spinning it around and running the zoom and all that kind of stuff.
We did not have any follow spot. Someone asked that. We didn't have any follow spot by Roby. We didn't have any PRG ground control or any kind of follow spotlight of any kind. We just used the movers that we had. We never really needed to follow anyone with a spotlight. We had it stationary and it just sat there. So,
I see some people are asking if we use manual trigger cues or show control. Basically we were running like some of those sequences with the time time code or anything. We were not any of the dance sequences. It was because we were making so many adjustments you know, and it was like, hey, you know what? Let's have them go over here, or have the person cross. So let's delay that cue half a beat, and you know, so it all was adjusted per take, very bespoke of what had to happen, you know. So yeah, a lot of times on sets we'd hang movers in there with sky panels, and then what's great about them is you could just flip them around. You could, like in this, for example, we could turn them around and bounce them into the white behind it. If we need ambience, we could bounce them into the dog cone. Yeah, that's right.
Kind of look at dog cone.
I love this. I think Charlie did such a great job on that, and it was so handy. We'll use this concept again.
This is KK. KK working his magic, and you know, coming up with interesting ideas that make challenges for all of us, which is great, and it's fun, you know. But you know, a lot of times, you know, you're not going to, you know, because one of the things that is also nice about moving lights is you're not investing in green beds, which is normally, you know, walkways in a stage that you hang, so people can walk around up there and adjust lights and, you know, get to them. That is it's a very effective tool, but it also can be very expensive. And so this is a way to, you know, with moving lights, especially with as many cues as we did and all this kind of stuff, it was an essential tool for this one. You know, because we could bounce them into the walls like this, match colors, you know, fade things out on cues, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, the thing is, what we learned about that is we had lights on the interior of that. What you're looking at when you look at that ceiling is basically, it's like a circus top set called Safe House. Yeah. And you're seeing, I don't remember the diffusion, Tana, but we basically, like, how do we get soft light in there? You know, obviously those units are pretty, everything that you're seeing in the shot there are so close to the subject, they would never work photographically. But the bounce afforded us the ability to use, you know, have like two movers pre-focus in one spot and two movers focus in another, and then Scott would just run a cue at the appropriate time in the scene to crossfade between the two. But then we also had the added value of actually having stuff all around that cone, the dog cone as we call it, and then we were able to change the quality of light to feel even more ambient if need be. So you know, it was just an effort. That the whole thing was just an effort to try to cheat the quality of light to be more ambient and not so, I guess, obvious.
Yeah.
What's the beauty of some materials too, that you can shoot through them and use them as bounce, like magic.
Was that magic cloth? A lot of magic cloth.
Yeah. The thing about this rig too, we had so much going on in this thing. And I know Scott, certainly with programming it was, because this, we're going to talk about it a little later. It's in the presentation. You know, KK, again, this was after the gnashing of teeth of the idea. It was great, which is, you know, we had like 4 different set elements between exterior location and stuff on stage. And, you know, that are all part of the last third of the movie where she's, you know, where they're hanging out in the safe house and stuff like this. And KK had the, I thought you said it was KK, Matty, the idea of a lighthouse and this lighting effect that would tie in to all these sets. So we always kind of knew there was a progression of this. And, you know, but we had to figure out ways and what the quality of the light is and how it would work through all these different set elements. And that was an interesting set of challenges, you know, because like this set especially, I mean, the way, because we have these movers inside, we had movers outside shooting through this diffusion, and just how it would move depending on what our angle was, what the action was. And I mean, Scott, the programming on this was like, it's pretty wild. You guys, you had your hands full.
Yeah, it was tricky. One thing, there was a common element that the lighthouse gag was something that we did on various sets in various ways. Sometimes we use just movers. Sometimes we use color forces. This set we use movers and sky panels. So there's it was a tricky one. It was fun though. The thing about doing gags on film is, you know, you do cues and effects and stuff for a stage thing. It's going to never change. It's going to be that every time you shoot that song or that performance or whatever like that. For film though, it's all about the camera angle. So what you do for one camera angle might have to change dramatically for another. And so as far as console workflow, I have to program in a way where I can make those changes quickly so Matty doesn't have to wait. So I have to think in terms of not just what's the best way to do it, but what's the one that gives you the most options for changes. So I do a lot of pixel mapping, or I create effects that are easily editable so that I can make those changes. Because for this particular thing, the sky panel gag was one thing. It was like an ambient effect going across. And sometimes it was 12 of them, sometimes it was 20 of them, sometimes it was just 6 of them, depending upon what shot we did. And then the movers would just trade off and sweep through windows. So one would hit a window, and then the timing would be another one hit another window, and so forth. But there again, depending upon the shot the angle we were shooting, it may not be that window. The camera might be next to that window, so Matty doesn't want to have that window going through at all. He just wants the ones that are in frame. And then to top it all off, you have bounces that are happening as well, just to help accent the amount of light that's coming in and out. So yeah, it was a really tricky one, but it worked well. I think it worked well.
I think it was probably the best execution overall, to be honest with you. It was the thing I had the most anxiety about going in, but it turned out to be probably the best looking scene, and just photographically, but also I think just performance-wise, everything sort of gelled together. It was a high-pressure moment in that little place, but it seemed like that's where the film really needed to come together, because it was the first time all those characters came together, and it was like it caused a lot of anxiety when it's such a difficult space to work in, even though it looked fantastic. So, I mean, just as a piece of art direction, it was amazing. But lighting it and then having to be beholden to lighting faces. And then all the other concepts that were developed by KK and Kathy ahead of me. Those are the challenges that we had to face. But I think it's the best scene in the movie.
This set wasn't built on the floor because, of course, in the middle of it was a tunnel that goes down into the funhouse set, and so the slide, yeah. And so it was built probably about 15, 18 feet off the ground. I mean, it was up there a bit, and so you couldn't just put a light on a stand out the window and shoot through the window because you were too low. So yeah, there's
just to elaborate a little bit on someone asking about, we were using movers to bounce light too. Yeah, that's the beauty about the movers. That's why Matty and Bauman use them so much, is because they can do everything. They can backlight, they can do effects, they can do spotlight, they can bounce, they can shoot through material. I mean, you can just do whatever you want with them. You can shape them with shutters. So they just have it's like having a
Source 4.
It's like having a Source 4 that's, on steroids. It just has, all these different abilities. So, and the fact that now Bauman mentioned that, there's quieter ones now, or ones that have no fans whatsoever. You can just hang them anywhere. You hang them right over the microphone, and sound guys will never hear them. So yeah, it's a workhorse. It definitely is a workhorse.
It's just really about it's like having a light. I mean, the when you light this broadly, everything's up in the air. So the only way to, Tanya, you always call it billiards, is we're always trying to figure out how to sneak in lower angles, and the way we do it is bouncing light from a high angle into a lower spot. And sometimes we bounce it into the set, sometimes we bounce it into diffusion, sometimes we bounce it into an actual bounce.
Yeah. Yeah, we just used the hell out of them. It was amazing.
We started using them on Iron Man 1, and I think that was
we never went back after that.
And I just never looked back.
Well, because of the bounce. Because you put the thing, it's you can automatically make something more naturalistic, more architectural, because you're not dealing with a direct source. You're dealing with,
I mean, they're putting them in condors now. They're going in condors. They're going everywhere. And anything from like right by camera, I've seen like 6 or 7 movers right by camera, just shooting into ceilings, all the way to like 200 or 300 feet away in a condor. Just anywhere in between. They're all over.
They have to roll around in their own fucking boxes.
Yeah. That's the only thing. I wish they were lighter, so we could be a little bit more free.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, it's a really interesting technology because the quality of them has gotten so much better. They've gotten quieter, which has been fantastic for what we do, because we're always recording sound, and the color quality. Since everybody's gone over to LED engines, because they used to just be a little HMI bulb in there. And so when you get 4 of them next to each other, you'd have 4 different colors because those bulbs age at different rates and stuff. Or, but with LED, the color consistency has gone up, and it's just made it a lot easier because you can just unplug the thing. You don't have to let it cool down. It's easier to move. It's a faster light. So it's a very exciting thing, especially for a lot of, we want to build effects into stuff and cues and things like that. And they're a great tool for that. Just want to start talking about one of our biggest sets in the show, which is the Ace Chemical location. And I'm gonna totally kill this guy's name.
Don't even try.
Okay, I won't.
It's a tough one.
Yes. So, but this.
No disrespect. He's a great artist.
Absolutely. This is really worth seeing. And so on Netflix, there's a documentary called Skyladder, and it's really worth checking out because one of the first meetings I came into on this, I walk in the office and I remember, Matty, you being like, hey, check this out. And you were showing me chunks of this documentary, which is what Kathy was really looking at for the visual reference for the sequence. And so what this guy does, he's an artist, and he does just these amazing he builds his own fireworks basically, and does these incredible performances on barges and in different locations that are just, filled with color and movement and all this kind of stuff. And, this documentary is really, really worth checking out when we're all in quarantine mode, because it was definitely the foundation for how we were going to approach lighting, creating these chemical explosion when Harley Quinn drives the truck into the Ace Chemical area. And so this was down in downtown LA in the Arts District in the area called Anderson Street. And, what this is kind of a map of how far we were going. It was about an 8-block, maybe it was a little longer, 8-block run with a lot of, this was we were shooting at night, and this was an active working warehouse space during the day. Just we were down there scouting, and I was like, oh my God, we're going to get killed because there were trucks racing by us. It's just a lot of activity going on during the day. And so the rigging crew had to, rig this during the day and figure out how to network it and all this stuff. And so we had condors spread around, and the idea behind it was that, Harley steals a truck and drives it into Ace Chemicals, and it explodes, and the light from this explosion just carries down all the way, down the street. And that was a good one. That was a tough one for the data team who had to work, incredibly close with locations. And this is the kind of shot that if you don't have a really, good location department, this becomes very difficult, because we were, probably interacting with 25 to 30 different businesses with, and with, different opinions of how they want to interact with the film business. And so it was just to get the network control across the board. And they were, there was a decision to maybe try some wireless, but I don't think that really worked out because of various reasons. And so they were just running Ethernet cable, from telephone pole to telephone pole just down the way, and dropping nodes in next to condors and things like that. It was a pretty elaborate rig, certainly one of the more elaborate ones that I've ever been involved with. And, one of the things we also, because we had to go from like a regular street light industrial look to a multicolor look. So a lot of sky panels attached to the light poles and things like this. And, a lot of different control things. And so one of the things we had in the condors was 2 360s, which were in light engine mode, which is where they're you have 12 pixelable engines inside there, pixel controllable engines you could run content through, and then 2 movers underneath, the 3000 solar frame theaters. And that worked as like kind of our night. What was great about it is we had a large soft source we could use, and then use the movers to accent different things, or add a little hard light to certain areas, or back like this, or front like that, or whatever we had to. You had something that was very versatile, and you could also send this rig up without anyone in it, which was really
Well,
really
yeah,
helped.
you're right there with the weight anyway. I don't know why you want to put meat in that.
Yes.
We moved him a few times though. We actually had to move him. The one thing that's interesting about this set is that this is another case where this Anderson Street had to serve two purposes. It was at the beginning of the film when Harley takes out Ace Chemicals in the semi is one, so that's the beginning. So that's somewhere in Gotham. And then at the very end, it had to serve as the kind of the precursor to the boardwalk or the pier at the end of the film. So, obviously Sky Panels were the choice for the sort of ambience, just so we could distinguish between those two environments in the film, but yet be on the same street. So again, it just speaks to the use of color and the use of LED to be able to, just reuse a space and a run. I mean, the hardest thing to do these days is to get a long run on a street, and we needed it for both scenes. So rather than try to pay location fees, an exorbitant amount of money in a completely different space, and what we should be watching is, fast travel and a lead actress who's been acting her ass off. I think it's better to try to find other solutions. But there it is. That's a great picture. I like to call it the microchip.
Yeah, this oh boy. So how do you create this explosion? Well, again, P10s. We went through a lot of different things of what we could do, and it all based on like, okay, what can we put down there at the end of the thing that we could hide? It had to be a construction crane. How big of a construction crane can we put down there? And so, and then it had to serve all these purposes. It had to be a general ambient light. Then it had to go completely crazy and throw in all these colors and stuff. And this is where the Chroma Q, Color Force, the Color Force 2s in particular paid off like crazy. Those and the P10s were fantastic for this. So that particular thing was, whatever you call it. I don't even know. Tana, did you have a name for that thing? I can't remember.
It was a couple. I think sometimes we called it the SS Cataract.
Yes, it was bright. So we had a bunch of Color Force 2s. We had some movers attached to the bottom. The SGM P10s, again, a punchy workhorse. And then some Sky Panel 360s. This is a drawing Scott did for it because we really had to be precise on how it was going to hang from the crane and how what it was going to, how we were actually going to physically rig this thing. It had to have, you can see it had to have these wheels on the bottom of it so they could roll it into position, attached to the crane, disconnect the wheels and send it up. And that could all be built off site and then, around the corner and then just roll it into position. But this is where you really are working with, it's really critical to have a really great rigging key and rigging gaffer who can.
That, just looking at this, I remember this is the importance of a image that you put out there on a little diagram like this. We took that as the angle that was preferred, and it actually ended up boning us. Yeah. So something to remember. Like you put it out there, make sure you either do a little wiggly line saying we would like this option, because that's what we gave you, and it was pointed too far down.
That's true. So. It is true because one of the things, of course, at the bottom of this, it says the total weight. We figured it was 2,800 pounds. Way off, people. We were way off. It was like 8,500 pounds or something.
Yeah, no, that was a Johnny overload situation.
So the problem was, as we started to tilt the light up, the weight gets transferred to one set of motors, and it's not evenly spread across the thing. It wasn't engineered for what we need to do. So I was like, can you tilt it up a little bit more? And, it's the delicate art of negotiation.
We figured it out, though. The next iteration of that was, so again, like the learning curve just never ends.
Yeah. Another stupid idea.
Yeah. Now, hopefully, here it is. And then we have I think we have a behind the scenes clip that we could probably play without getting booted off again. Jake, if you have that. Yeah. But it was, this was always just getting it, then we had to control it. And, one of the things that, Scott, you were doing on this was, you were pixel mapping this obviously and running content through it. Cause this had to do multiple things. It had to be an ambient light. It had to be an explosion. It also had to be a firelight post explosion, cause there's another scene afterwards. And
Yeah,
so
this was one of the things that we did in the camera test as well. And I think what we did in the camera test is what I ended up doing on this, just on the larger scale, because it worked so well. But yeah, I ran media. Some people were asking about this. I pixel mapped right on the console. I didn't use a media server. I used the one built into the Hog, which is really good. That's why I do a lot of pixel mapping now. I do it straight out of the Hog. I think I loaded a little bit of content, but I used some of the stuff they already had in there. But it was like a cloud clip that just it was white, luckily, so I could make it whatever color I wanted. And I think I just multiplied it. So I had like different colors, magentas, cyans, blues, just doing this cloud burst. And then that was basically our base layer, and it pixel mapped across all of them, and including the movers and the sky panels. The P10s actually ended up doing their own thing. They were more of a white hit effect that we were doing, and it was on a separate button that I would hit. But the cloud thing worked really well, and I moved them around so they were floating around different places. And then you guys wanted, I don't know if it was Matty or Bauman or both, but you guys wanted to extend the effect down the street more. So we had 360s and condors down the street that I would just, that's the great thing about pixel mapping is when, you guys come to me and say, hey, let's make that one do it too. All I got to do is just drag that into the pixel map area. And now all of a sudden it's going to be doing the same thing all the others are doing. So that was really easy. I didn't have to write anything new. I just add whatever I want into the pixel map, and they start doing the effect as well. So it worked really well. And yes, it was what we did on the camera test. So it's pretty much the same.
Somebody's asking about why put 360s in with all that punch. And I think that, when you're, the chief responsibility for this rig was to do the explosion. And I think, in looking at a lot of reference and sort of imagining what we wanted it to look like, you got to mix qualities of light. And I think having a 360 there with something like a P10, there's some polar opposites in terms of light quality. And then in between that, with the media, you're modulating. And then, again, it's just another cocktail to try to create the effect. So the reason to have units isn't necessarily certain units isn't necessarily because you want it's not always intensity. Sometimes it's just a light quality. Yeah,
and this shot here I thought was interesting because this is Greg, who's the visual effects supervisor. They had already kind of drawn out what ACE chemicals are going to be, and so he kind of had already. He's throwing it up here on the iPad so we could kind of see what this end result was going to turn into. Because they were going to paint basically everything out that we had going on. And so, the monstrosity is going up, and then we finally got it in position, which was great. And then, we wanted to tilt it up a bit and things like that. But it worked great. And it's so, this just goes to this was an idea Kathy had very, very early in the process, and we tested it out, and, we did it in camera tests early. We did it in a lot, and just to get to this end result. So it's nice when this is I don't know.
When it works.
When it works. That was 2 months ago, and it's oh Jesus, is this actually going to work? And so this is the end result of the frame. And then when we were doing her close up, we were using that, but then we also were able to roll in a couple of sky panels, some 360s off the floor, and just run the same again, like Scott said. Hey, this is get the addresses, put the same content through those, and now you've got a source which is a little lower, it's bigger, it's a little softer, a little more pleasing, and it's running the same effect. So it all is all matching. I think, Jake, there's a behind the scenes clip for this that you can run. But this is, then this is a shot of how it's laid out on the Hog. And we didn't have 14 condors, 15 condors. Those are the universe numbers. I think we had maybe 7 or 8. But that's the kind of the layout that Scott had for.
I think we had about 8 or 9. Jared, where are you? I think we had 8 or 9 on the actual crane rig, but each condor was a universe. So we actually, I don't know what genius thought of this, but we actually numbered the condors according to what universe they were. Because we had 2 360s on each condor, that's almost a whole universe because they were in mode 25, which is pixel mode. It's like 193 channels per light. So we just decided, let's just number the condors per universe. And then that way, when you roll it from one street to the other, you can just pop it in the node and you know that that's condor 14. So it goes in universe 14. So.
Yeah. And you can see in the clip there, kind of extending the content into the sky panels that are down on the, the condors that are further down away from the crane, and just really extending that effect down. And what's great is we could throw that into a lot of different things depending on how the shot evolves and things like that. But yeah, it's certainly a thing of like, again, when you're talking about this length of distance, it was we shot, I think, how many nights did we shoot here? Was it 2? I mean, second unit came in and did a bunch of other stuff too, but maybe it was 2 or 3 nights. It wasn't
for what? Remember. For Ace Chemicals?
For Ace Chemical.
I thought it was nights? 2.
That was 2 for Ace Chemicals, and it was another.
And then the roast night and all that was additional.
Yeah.
It was like 2.5.
Yeah. To be honest. It wasn't a lot for us,
Hey, that image, Mike, that you're showing right there. So we did not use fiber on this, even though it was like 8 or 9 blocks. It was Cat 6 all over the place. The data team did an awesome job. They ran data for Hog, and then they ran data. I mean, not data, but Ethernet for Hog, and they ran Ethernet run for all the streaming ACN, or did we use ArtNet? I don't remember. I can't remember what we used. But we had nodes. I think all those red boxes you see there are nodes, and then we just ran a whole bunch. Just not very many people know this. Some of you guys do know, but I don't. The console I'm using on set, and I'm, as you could see from earlier, I'm right by Matty usually most of the time. If I'm not, he's going to yell at me. But the data is not coming from the console. It's coming from a RackHog, which is a console server, and we store that in like a little mini mobile shed or something on locations. On stage, it'll be on stage, but that's driving the entire rig. So one of those little areas there on that map is where the actual data is being processed and driven. And then the HogNet is just connected to the console, and the console is just a client. So I can disconnect and move. So when DIT moves to another part of the street or whatever, I can disconnect, and the rig keeps running because the RackHog's running everything. And I'm just able to log out, roll over where I need to, log back in, because they put switches everywhere for me to log in and out. And that's how that workload works.
Yeah. And
wow, mega sausage.
Yeah.
No, but you know what's great? Now I'm not going to feel bad about asking them to move again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah.
How much time do I spend at the beginning of the day trying to figure out where everybody goes so they don't have to move?
Oh, it's our biggest.
Now, if I knew it was this easy.
As long as I have a good team behind me, but it gets me all I'm not doing all that work. Someone else that's better than me is doing that.
Hey, Tana, somebody asked a question about the rig, about what tilts the rig. It looks like what kind
of motors are those? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, sure, they were 1 tons and a bunch of them.
Yeah,
I can't remember exactly, but I do know that we had the next time we did that rig, we did a flow through so that the weight could you could do more and still spread the weight. On that particular rig, it's separate points, all separate points, so you are limited. Obviously the top motors were taking the brunt of it versus sharing it with a flow through. So I think
well, because I think there's taglines. I think one of the other things, there's taglines at the bottom of that rig when it's in position.
Taglines are for panning it. The tilt is done by motors.
Someone's asking does your data team only take care of DMX and Ethernet connections? In theory, but I mean, look, the data team is like, hey, we need those lights working. They're not setting up the lights, but they're like, just part of their job is to make sure that every light is assigned properly, that it's getting proper signal. They set up the console too. They set up the console too. They do.
Yep.
Yeah. They also they'll patch in the console. They'll patch all the fixtures and everything, so you come in and it's ready to go. They're like fixtures. Like for any type of movie of this level, you need a team like that to be able to execute for this, because we're still trying to work a regular day, like a 10-hour day, and we're shooting at night, so you're limited about how much time you have because it's nights. It's a
and keep in mind, everyone, that it's not just the rig; it's also the truck package. It's also the package that rolls with us from set and location to location, and sometimes that package can be bigger than the rig. It just depends. It's gotten to the point where now, I mean, it used to be like, I don't know how many years ago, the truck package would be maybe one universe, maybe two at the most. Now I'm getting into shows where it's like 8, 9, almost 10 universes or more. And mostly it's because of the pixel count. The DMX footprint of these lights now is becoming massive. But yeah, so the data team has to account for that too. They're not just making sure the lights and the condors work. They're making sure there's enough data everywhere and connection points everywhere, so that when the guys bring in stuff on first unit, that we have everything we need for that too.
Yeah. Somebody asked just like what kind of sort of throw distances are fixtures doing from a condor, 100 feet, 300 feet. I mean, look, it depends what you're putting in there. I mean, it can be, 500 feet. It can be longer than that. It really depends, what you're trying to get out of it. Generally, everything here was throwing at least 300 feet, 300 to 500. And we had, I don't think we were ever really struggling ever for light. I mean, certainly the stuff in the crane was throwing, I don't know, 1,500 feet or something. I think Jake might have played it earlier, but there is a video of this, basically post the explosion, there's this chemical fire. And so we basically use that same rig, again, multi-purposing, and Scott ran, I don't know, Jake, if you can play that clip, but Scott ran fire content through it. So then we were able to create the fire effect of post-explosion going on and lighting all the.
That is not custom that is not default content in the Hog. That I had to add. But nothing beats a fire effect with actual fire video. You can't beat it.
Yeah.
It's very organic.
Oh, okay. Here, yeah, he's playing it. Thank you, Jake. It's just those kind of things. That kind of versatility is really critical. And again, it's something that big doing fire effect. It gives you so much. You just get so much visual value out of it. I mean, it makes And then we were just augmenting on the ground with sky panels, like with police lights on and stuff like that. Yeah. The next set we just want to talk about was what's called the Fun House, and yeah, a lot going on in this one. I don't necessarily know if it was always fun.
No, no.
This again was KK, like this design. I don't know. I remember Tad and I were like, "What?" Especially when he added the trampolines and all that kind of stuff. We did this at Warner Brothers in Burbank on Stage 14, and it started as a it started as like this just evolving concept. I mean, he had a good idea for it, but there's a lot of it about how we're going to do it in the size of this stage. I remember that, and so it was just some of the most unusual set I've ever seen.
Well, it wasn't defined by walls, so that was an interesting thing. And I think the initial idea was that it was going to be, if you look at that plot there, all those shapes in the middle of the stage are basically rides or events in a fun house. Yeah. But it wasn't. It was meant to be in kind of a black void, which is always a dangerous thing visually. I think, speaking as a cinematographer, I thought it was going to be hard to sort of, even if we broke up a fall off of a curtain, I think there's going to be a sort of a false quality to it. So we decided to, one of the last things we decided to do is we wanted to add lights around the entire perimeter of this set, so that we had something to give us the sense that there was something that went beyond each event or each ride, right? And I forgot what we used for that, but It ended up becoming the set.
No, we used P1s. So we talked about the P10, and I think, was it Volt, Bauman? Volt provided all the P1s?
Volt lighting. Yeah.
Volt lighting had a bunch of these P1s, which is just a miniature version of the P10, and they worked great.
Yeah, and so it was like for the walls, because obviously the stage walls are very bright. I mean, they're we're going to see everything. There's no thing there. So I think they hung that shark's tooth backing across the entire perimeter. And then the rigging crew put 3 rows of pipe. And this is, again, is their trust. This was about, we had to save some bucks. Every movie always has budget issues. And certainly we didn't need to get a lot out of it. So it's just like hang a pipe, 3 rows of pipe. And then we just started hanging P1s across it. And so but just to focus again, going back to our friends and fixtures, this is Phil Abeda. He was our lead fixtures technician, and this is where he's smiling. And this set was a challenge for him. And these carousels, one of the things is we had these various lit elements, carousels and things like that hanging overhead, and with these multiple amounts of lights in them, but we wanted to have the lights do something. And so we looked at doing it with some sort of pixel controllable source. And so these are the drawings from when Phil was kind of mapping out how many pixels we would do. And this is him working with Kazra in the art department, and the art department team was just like kind of and then you're also working with construction to figure out how structurally can you execute this kind of thing. And so, so they had, it was a great idea. I mean, we started laying them in everywhere. KK was going crazy. And it's what was interesting is that it had to be like we had to kind of come up with a solution that we could get as many, because there's over 1,000 pixels in here. So 1,000 of these little balls, and what could we do? So they ended up using these Adafruit picks, and that's
great picture.
Yeah, and they had wired all this up. They had done all these sub-assemblies, which would then attach to the set pieces as they come in. And you can see to the left of them here, they've drilled holes in these things so they could run wire through them and all that. And, this was the end result. This is what the end goal was. And then we could do multicolors in them if we needed to, or we could turn some off or run content through them. I mean, it's a really strong visual. It's great. But
they were a little surprised when I said, okay, we're going to wild this, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. Again, you got to make stuff that can move. That's right. I remember that, Tana. They were like, what? Oh my God. But what was clever is that, so they would take these rings and, put them on, but we needed a thing to diffuse them with. And so Phil, he came up with this, which is a great idea, which is, when you go to those, what do you call those things? Vending machines that vend out kids' toys, and they come in that little plastic thing with a clear bubble on the top. You put your 25 cents in and it spits it out. So he had found the company that makes the tops, and he had the paint department paint them all and frost them. And then they went through and they glued them all on with hot guns, with a ton of hot glue, and just created this rows and rows and rows of these things. And there wasn't an off-the-shelf solution that we could get in volume. And so we needed a lot, and we needed them spaced a certain way. And so you end up, and this is what we were talking about earlier, where fixtures really is a critical department for these kind of films, where you need somebody who can come up with solutions. And, because they're dealing with this set plus 5 other sets. So this thing was crazy. I mean, it was and then they also had to work with construction and figure out where to put power supplies, where to put pixel controls, and, how to build all that into this thing. And then construction had to drill holes through steel and stuff so the wires could pass through. And it's just it's a lot of designed work. And this is just one element.
I worked with Phil and his team on Guardians 2, and this is the first time, Guardians 2 was the first time we used these rings. I think we used RGB ones for that, though. These ones had a white as well, I believe. And on Guardians, we actually controlled the individual pixels of each ring, and we had a whole bunch of them. On this one, because we were putting them in the cap, the diffuser, we didn't really need control of every pixel. So Phil came up with he had the software that comes with the controller for it that they used, and I don't know what it is. Maybe he'll write it out on the chat.
But
But
it was some NTIP controller or something.
he had to soft patch basically the rings so that I drove one single fixture and those channels would be divided up and hit all 16 pixels, I think it was, or 12 pixels for every ring. So we treated the software basically was able to convert those rings into one fixture rather than individual pixels, if that makes sense.
That's mega sausage, like Tana would say. And the other thing was interesting. It's such a large area because I think that big ring was like, I don't know, 30 feet in diameter, and all hung with motors. And this is all part of the conversations because I don't think there were many flat surfaces on this set. There's a lot of just very unusual surfaces, and so I remember, Matty, you and Tana, just a lot of conversations about how you're going to move around in here. Where are you going to put what's the tool and. But what was nice about these rings is there was definitely a very soft ambience they could provide. But there was a lot going on there. I mean, it was, and then with adding like a reflective floor and stuff, it's pretty cool. It was just, yeah.
And all of that stuff was pixel mapped.
Yeah. And somebody's asking, somebody had asked, what was it here? What's the pushback, if any, and what concessions do you have to make? It doesn't seem like much. Oh my God. Let me tell you, it doesn't matter what budget we're at, whatever. It is all about the art of compromise and understanding the creative vision. I don't know. I mean, we all got to do that, and it's all like, it's just, you're going to end up making compromises and a lot of conversations with budget and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's a doozy, yeah. But we definitely are making. I mean, like Tana. I mean, I don't know how many times we were in there talking to Sue McNamara, who's the line producer, and she was the UPM, and Hans, who's the line producer, just about like how do we approach this? How do we do this? This is never ending conversation. Yeah. So a lot of stuff happening on this thing, no doubt.
Where's Mango?
Yeah, exactly. But again, there's probably a good 7-8 minutes of the movie with all this stuff in here. And
just to clarify on some of these images, all of those lights worked. We just found out when we started shooting. Matty was telling me that the location these actors are supposed to be in, the characters are in, supposed to be a rundown place. It's all torn to shit, and so we just basically randomly selected on the plot a whole bunch of fixtures and just turned them off so that it looked like it was all broken. So unfortunately for the fixture guys, they had to make everything work even though we didn't use them all.
Better to need it and not have it. Better to have it and not need it.
It worked great.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was really, man, it worked great. When all the plates were spinning, it worked great. And, it was, just to talk of, oh yeah, boy, the set, there's so much going on.
They built it literally to the fire lane. There was no, and it was nothing but ankle breakers everywhere. I mean, there wasn't really a flat surface. And just the importance of, even if you don't think something's going to move, put it on motors, make it able to move just for the forward flow. Like all those ladies the cutouts were hanging, those were all on motors pretty much. And we'd be flying them and breasting them and constantly, making it move. I can't stress how important it is that it can move.
Yeah. Versatility was key because let's put the camera down here, let's move the lady up. I mean, it was like, there was, and then we, in the center of this whole thing, above the centerpiece was this carousel, and above that we had this thing called the scoreboard, which was just our cocktail of sky panels and chroma key color force and movers, and it totally worked really well. Those are the P10s hanging on the set wall that, on the different levels of pipe. And what that was is so that was shooting through the shark's tooth. and then you could look in those directions and have highlights and going on. So we mixed it up between P10s and P1s. Sorry, P1s.
The little guys.
The little guy. But we just had highlights back there.
All the color forces were pixel mapped as well, by the way. Like the scoreboard area that Matty called the scoreboard.
Yeah, I thought that was. I think Matty, when we were talking about what to do there, that was you were like, let's put some sources back there. And I remember us testing a few different types of lights to see kind of what would work. But there's always highlights to shoot into, which is great. I think we had like 60 of them in there or something like that.
I mean, I remember going through different cues where we turned sections of it off and then sections of it on, depending on when we transitioned from one place to another.
Yeah.
Remember you had red, and then we had, like, weren't we using blue sometimes? Was there a reason why you were doing one color versus another, or?
Well, each color kind of corresponded with each character's journey through the funhouse. You know, as you recall, the mirrored part of it was Renee's, Rosie Perez's area, and those, like, we lit it with red color forces and mixed it, like, sometimes, and we would literally do cues to keep the contrast, like, you know, turning a lot of it off and just running your content through maybe half of it and different sides of like 3 or 4 runs of color forces above the set. And, you know, the color there would correspond to the deep background of that particular spot. And we would do the same thing when we did the tongues for
Huntress.
Mary. Yeah, Huntress.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
And that's where the cyan would be there, or the blue. There we use cyan.
We would never know cyan.
No, it's not cyan. We can't use the word cyan.
Aqua.
A little more blue and aqua. Yeah, a little more blue-green maybe. What do you think? You know, yeah.
Blue-green.
Yeah. You know, something funny about this image was we were trying to, you know, we were just looking for different visual things. And so these are some clay packy mythos that are up there. And, you know, we had them going because we wanted to create some effects and stuff, which was good. And then you know, this is where, as a mirror ball, we tried to hang a couple mirror balls up there, so they were available for like wrap. Hey, let's bang all the mythos into the mirror balls, and you know, and it was like a great idea as a joke. But then I don't know, Scott, you tell the story really well. What ended up happening?
Well, as Bauman's accustomed to doing, he always has rap mode or party mode. He had the guys run to the shop one day and grab a mirror ball and bring it back and quietly and stealth like go upstairs and rig it. And then at some point I had to find a way to pre-focus the mythos into the mirror ball without causing a major distraction. But that didn't work because Matty came around the corner when I was doing it, and I quickly turned him off, and he's like, "What was that?" And I was like, "Nothing, was just working on something." And Matty said, "Turn it back on." So Matty had me turn it back on, and I turned it on thinking, okay, any second now he's going to tell me to turn him off, and he never had me turn him off. He said, "Just leave it."
It created these cool highlights, you know. It's something that I hadn't thought about, and it just created yet another layer of lighting as long as the ball wasn't moving.
We added, we didn't move the ball, and we added 2 more, or 3 more, I think.
Yeah.
We ended up getting more, and then we even did it on the prom. We used the mirror ball on the prom as well.
Oh, you did? All right. Awesome.
Same kind of
gag.
I
know, but the best thing, though, is what we had to do underneath it, because I didn't like what the light was doing right underneath it. So we actually had to take 4 lines into the perms and drop down and use a piece of show card to try to bottom off the bottom of the ball, which was
a little diaper underneath.
Yeah. Technology meets the old ways.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, but it worked great because it was something to shoot into. It was fantastic. I mean, you know, and then here's an example of what Scott was saying is that Phil had everything working and all that, but Matty's like, this place is supposed to be run down and screwed up. So, you know, we had to shut a bunch of stuff off, make it flicker, so it was a kind of a messed up place. But
I remember the night before, after they saw it how, in its pristine state, they're all like, this is supposed to be messed up. So the actors had to come in and distress and age and, just have at it. The fumes coming off of that set when we showed up the next morning were intense.
Yeah, it was crazy. I just want to speak briefly about like this. What we were talking about earlier was this lighthouse effect that KK had come up with, and how he had to extend it from different sets. And we started down at location, and this is the exterior of this funhouse environment, which is like the third act of the movie. And this was down the street, actually, a little bit down the street from where we had done Anderson Street, and
also Anderson Street.
yes, also at. Where we'd done Ace Chemical. And so it was like just, basically 3 more blocks down, here we were. And
roller derby.
The roller derby. Yeah. They got a lot. This is what Greg and the visual effects team ended up doing to it. But one of the things is we would play the clip, but we're not allowed to, we had to create a lighthouse out here. So I think, I don't know if I have a picture of it, whatever. Jake, do you have a clip behind the scenes from this for the, funhouse exterior, hopefully, but you can kind of see in this image here. There's a lift, a condor back behind, back above that palm tree that has 4 Solarframe 3000 stacked on top of each other. And so what Scott had done is taken that, and we had created this cadence of how the lighthouse is going to pan, and which was great because you ended up getting this effect that would just swing through the set. And that was kind of the start of what our cadence was going to be for all these other spaces that the characters would travel through. And it was great. I mean, because we had to extend this also on stage, and here we have the benefit of distance. We didn't, we'll show later, we didn't really have that. But this is what the stuff looked like from the tent. And it was again. Was
it 4? It was 4 top to bottom, right?
Vertical.
Yeah, they are right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think he's got a clip here.
What was nice is the pan gag from left to right was the same on all 4 of them. But then what was cool is since we didn't really need tilt for the gag, we were able to tilt them however we wanted. So you could they'd still do the same synchronization of pan, but we could just tilt the bottom one down a little bit more or the top one up a little bit more. There you go. That's a good one.
Yeah, there they go. They swing through. Yeah, so you can kind of see it's just a lot of.
I think I actually adjusted zoom during the gag as well.
Yeah, you did.
You might.
I think I started tighter and got wider or something like that.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm just looking at, just quickly looking at some questions here.
What was that distance, Mike?
That was because it was on the other side of the street. That was probably to the face of the funhouse. That had probably about 200. I think Aaron, the visual effects, on the visual effects team, measured it for me. It was like 230 feet or something like that. And as far as the front of it, where it was in the front. Let's see. I was going to say the next bit of business we have is the safe house, which we had this great clip that we could have talked about, but so much for that. So yeah,
we kind of talked about that.
Yeah, we did something.
Do you have that clip from the plot from the hog plot that shows the? Did you see that one? That was in the Google pics that I sent you.
Oh, I don't know if I didn't see that one.
That folder I had showed you the gag happening on the console. All right.
So the end of the film ends up in this pier, which is on stage 17 at Warner Brothers. And this was, again, we had, so they basically get into a space where it's very foggy, and where kind of she has Harley Quinn has her meet up with Roman Sionis, and he meets his demise. Spoiler alert. But it's a tight stage. It's actually a stage that they use for live broadcasts. So, about a quarter of the stage is all these gold rooms and all this stuff on the right hand side of this plot that is not things we can use, but it's a part of the stage. And so it was we didn't have a lot of room in this thing, and so we ended up doing one of the key components in this was huge amounts of atmosphere. huge amounts of atmosphere that we could light to kind of get the idea of the fact that there's we need to have something to light, to create the cadence of the lighthouse. There's a lot of moving parts in this movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was this version of the lighthouse on the pier and the version we just looked at with the movers, we tested on the same day, and the reason why one is used versus the other is strictly because of the distance that the light had to be when we shot the scene. And if you think about, I like to, we do this all the time. So when we're talking about lighting a set, we're also talking about what the reality of it would look like, and try to adhere to it. So, the lighthouse geographically in the movie was meant to be close to this pier. So the light's not actually shining down directly onto the pier. It's actually shooting out. So what we wanted to create when we shot the pier was the feeling of the ambience that was coming off of that beam of light. Whereas when we were at the fun house, it was a couple miles away from that lighthouse, and it should have a different quality of light. So, these are things that we discuss, and these are the things we test, and then we implement them.
Yeah. And so the solution we had, because the distance was building these racks and attaching color force to them. And, this would basically had 4 positions for them. I'll back up a bit here, right here. So you can see on this map, there's 4 of these racks that were kind of designed based off of what the geography was in the film world of where the lighthouse would be happening. And so, and then we had one on the opposite end, just as in case we did some sort of reverse and might have needed something. But these racks worked out great. Jake, I think you have 2, you got 2 behind the scenes clips if you want to play those. But it shows kind of when these things are hung on the stage, how we created this effect, and again, running some of this cadence that we had established on location through. Scott, how did you translate that into what we did here? I don't even know how you did that.
Timing.
Yeah.
Just the movement across. This is pixel map as well. So the mover gag, obviously there's a certain amount of timing. I'm going from one cue to the next. So whatever amount of time that was, I started with that probably on this one. But rather than obviously doing timing with pan that I was doing on the mover, here I'm doing timing with white content that's moving across the arrays of color forces. And then it would just snap back to the beginning and then do it again. So once again, I mean, pixel map just gives you so much versatility. You can see right here on that clip, the bottom part of the arrays are being cut out, and so that's intentional. So it means to get the same kind of effect, but not use all the pixels. So we could widen or broaden the amount of pixels we want on the gag easily, and you could change also the window of light as well. So if you wanted it, tighter or wider, it was a really easy thing to adjust on the fly. So that's why I chose to do it that way.
And then we could extend it to the sky panels too if we needed to extend the gag, fill in holes and stuff like that. It worked out. It actually worked out, considering those lights were probably maybe where they were hung from where the actors were. It was maybe about 40, 45 feet. It was, with all the atmosphere in there, it worked out really well.
I saw someone asking about color forces versus studio forces. I think we all would agree a studio force would be awesome to have. You just can't get the amount you want. They're just not out there yet. So color forces are everywhere, and studio forces aren't. But they're kind of they're getting close. But there's just so many of them everywhere. Color forces are everywhere. So we had to kind of go with that. But studio forces would be awesome. Yes, they give you a little bit more versatility as far as color control.
One of the reasons why we cut off the bottom, Scott, is because on the deeper lights, like if the camera was in a certain position, if you saw those bottom lights, you could see where the light source was coming from. And the whole idea is it was coming up so high, so much higher than the frame actually was.
Yeah.
That we had to eliminate the entire bottom of that rig.
I think we fought the low. I think it would have been nice to do that in a much taller stage, obviously.
Yeah.
Because look at the teasers alone. I mean, you're looking right into the teaser versus seeing.
Yeah.
I had to hand this one off to someone. I think I left midway through. Someone had to come over and take over on the console. It was Aaron, and he had to take over my crazy show file.
I know. Yeah, he did a good job though. He did a good job.
Yeah.
Jared actually commented. He said, "Yeah, we only did have 3 of these racks. I think we ended up only with 3 of the racks because of budget constraints." He is right. I do remember that.
But wait, didn't I make you move one because I thought we were going to do a reverse?
Yeah. We thought we were going to reverse, and then
the corn cob. We were calling the corn cobs at that point.
The corn cob. That's right.
That's right. There's the name.
See, that's
right.
What's great about our working relationship, because we've been working together for so long, is Tana always comes up with the best names for whatever.
She's the namer.
She comes up with great stuff, you know. But visual
corn
effects.
cob is one of you guys, though. I think that's Matty.
I don't know.
Yeah, it came from the test.
Yes, because it was the array was arced. We had an arc on the array rather than straight across.
No, I know who it was. It was James. Because I remember I asked for it to be rigged like that, and then he said, "Look, like a corn cob."
Oh my God!
It gets the point across, all right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it totally does. Visual effects. I mean, they brought it all in here. I mean, the smoke. The fog and all that. I think was primarily us. I'm sure they augmented some, and then they certainly added the water out there and because we were just shooting into solids and. And they added the roller coaster and these highlights and stuff. But in the clip, when you see this part of the film, it's just the cadence of the light worked out really, really nice considering what we were kind of dealing with. Yeah. I mean, I remember us really having to watch our exposure on the smoke so it wouldn't get too hot and, kind of still keeping this like, we
were kind of exposing for it though, Mike. I mean, we were kind of, that's where we had the Odyssey, where we had false color was all set to the smoke.
Yes, you're right.
And the faces had to fall within that those shades of gray there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have 2 other things to talk about real quick. This is the Italian restaurant, and this scene. This was a great scene. This was these are the kind of scenes that for me at least as a gaffer, they're so much fun to do. It's kind of in the vein of it's an all-in-one shot. It's kind of in the vein of what we did earlier in Black Mask Club when we did the movie through the crowd all in one, and it's like old school filmmaking. And this was really interesting because it was in the movie in the set. The script had it that when I read it the first time, I'm like, what the hell is this? Because it's jumping back in time, and we're going to do this in all-in-one shot. And so it starts with this, these mobsters getting killed. They're dead, and Rosie Perez, who plays the character Renee Montoya, she was introducing herself to the situation, and that's when the audience first meets her. And it was so interesting. I don't know, Matty, how we came, just the 2 different time periods of it and the 2 different color temperatures and all that kind of stuff. This was a good one.
Well, I mean, it was like it's born out of, Kathy's vision for the film was to choreograph shots and have a point of view. And when I read this scene, I felt like it was something where there could be the potential to do some very cool transitions from Renee to Mary's character, from Renee to Huntress. And plus, it was kind of an introduction to Huntress in a way, in terms of an action scene. So, going from a crime scene into an action scene, I thought we both thought it would be more interesting if we could figure out a way to let those things blend together. And obviously, it's kind of a low-hanging fruit, the idea of changing color temperature between 2 time periods. So that made a lot of sense. But what I love about the scene is the incorporation of the presence of the cops. There's nothing out there. I mean, we're at night, shooting in a very tiny restaurant, and those are lights outside creating that effect. But what I love is the added value of our the color con that we put on to bring out to just add yet another layer to the cocktail to create that sort of cop light feel. Within that section of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was, we were shooting this at a restaurant called, I think it's called Delancey's. It's on Sunset.
Great pizza.
Great pizza. Yes, we ate there on the Scout. And, but we only had this thing for one day. And so the rigging crew had to come in at like a little bit after midnight and put the rig in. I think we had like a 10 a.m. call or something. And then we shot, and then they had to get out of there. So we had a lot packed into this day. And this is all Steadicam. With it's a bummer we can't play the clip. Yeah, Scott Second was just bringing massive game, and we had everything on this entire environment. On cues and on dimmers. Outside the windows, we had sky panels and a stereotube, so we could create effects of car passing and police gag headlights. Police gag. Cop lights and things like that. And inside was, I think Tana, like we couldn't really screw into the ceiling or something. There was a whole bunch of restrictions on the ceiling.
No, it was a total no touch me ceiling, delicate rig. It was all 5/8. It was just like a micro version of everything else we do. A delicate hand. Very delicate.
And so,
I mean, what's good about the images? You can sort of see the two color temperatures that work against each other. I thought, it's another case, like Tana was saying earlier, it's like everybody's kind of working on the shot together. I mean, every cue, we did, I don't know how many takes we did. I don't think we did that many, but it was tricky to get the cue to happen at the right time. And a lot had to do with us and our lighting cues and the actors. And then they had to be in sync with what we were doing. So it took time for everybody to communicate all those things. Because you're literally, you're starting the scene in present day and transitioning to Huntress for what happened previous in the same place. And that getting that timing right for the color to change and the cue to start was something that the director with Kathy was really specific on. So, and sometimes we'd be a few frames too soon, and it had to be a few frames after. So it was like everybody punched in from a technical level as well as a dramatic level, which is always fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was like, and it was so interesting too, because it's like, as soon as we would pan away, as soon as Scott got the camera off of the dead mobsters, and and the two police are talking and walking away, in jumps the prop department and makeup and off camera, and as quiet as they could be, because everybody's in there working, redressing the table, getting these guys all squared away, all this kind of stuff, so that when the camera wings around and we're in the past, this is what it looks like. And we had all the lights in the bar on cue so they could come up. The restaurant's functioning. It's a really interesting shot. And then Huntress comes in and lays down the law. And then so our stuff outside the windows had to transition back to had to transition into the past. So it was like warm tones and just city life, I guess, going out there, and the practicals all dimmed up and things like this. And then as she's talking at the end of this thing, which is really cool, it transitions back to the present day, into this kind of look, which was really it was fun. It was a fun shot.
No, it's fun to do stuff like that in camera for sure.
Yeah, and we're seeing every inch of this place. I mean, so this is what the rig was in the ceiling, and like Tana said, I mean, I don't know, Tana, you want to talk about this crazy thing?
It's just, when you get to these locations that that bit of protrusion down the center is ducting, so we've very carefully squeezed onto it. And, it's like basically opportunist rigging. You just grab any little point. I'm sure there was something on the bottom of the fans, and, you can see how it stretches everywhere, wherever you can get a little bit of contact. But that one definitely had to monitor the amount of lights going up there a little more heavily than usual.
Yeah, it was because then we started with this concept of like lightweight soft light, which is like tile and light boxes and all that. And then we added some stereotubes as bounces into the ceiling, or hanging them as edges and things like that, because we could run the police effect through the stereotubes, so some of that exterior cop gag could carry inside the building. And then and then that could fade out when we kind of went back to the time of the past when it was all warm. And I mean, it was, it's one of those locations where everybody's on ladders, it's cable everywhere. It was just,
Oh, I wasn't there for that part.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, it was just like, oh God. You know, because we were seeing every inch of this place, and you know, we needed to preserve. And this is, you know, and I remember just, you know, when you and Scott and Kathy were working the shot out, and just like, you know, listening. Okay, we're gonna need to make sure we have enough room over there. Let's have something ready over here. You know, it was a challenge. I mean, I think, Jake, do you have any behind the scenes stuff for this? Let's see.
There's Danksel's on.
Fantastic. Well, there we go. I don't think we do. Anyway, there's I'm gonna, you know, and so yeah, you can see we just had everything up there, and that's Scott, the operator, kind of working it out with what the shot is, and it was you know, and this was interesting too, because as we were doing it, I remember like we were finding maybe 4 or 5 takes in, and we had him going by the windows, and you know, and we had cop lights going, but it was kind of like whatever. And then I don't know whose idea it was, but I think Matty were just talking about how to get a car going by there, so we just put a line of Asteras, and then just had a queue that went by as she walks by the windows. So there was just another layer of life. I think kind of fun. It was a good. But, you know, I mean, that took us a couple of takes just to kind of get and see what was going on, but it worked out really well.
Well, I just gave the scene another added. It's like it's always adding a little bit more at the risk of putting too much in. You know what I mean? Just to create depth, and all the ideas you have to create depth. The illusion of reality, really.
Yeah, and you know, we use the stereotubes all over the place for just, you know, again, it's a great, easy, quick. You know, this is when we had to do a bomb coming through a window or something, and you know, to trace the fireball coming through. You know, it's a great, quick way to be able to do stuff.
That's our color con right there.
That's our color con, and I think we got your. Let's got the couple color con clips. Yeah, exactly. So that's the. So the color con is something that you guys. I mean, I remember you've evolved it from a couple of shows, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Stars Born. Did you guys use it on that?
Compton was the inspiration, right?
Yeah. I mean, we played with the idea and straight out of Compton, but that was for a specific effect with specific laughs to create sort of a visual motif for each of the characters in the band. But then on the Stars Born, you know, we used it more as a, like, you remember the Panaflasher, you know, or Ares version of it. You know, I was using it more to create a consistent contrast level when I couldn't use smoke in a set. Because in many cases we couldn't use smoke in some of the recording studios, so I'd use the color con to sort of flash the low end of the image. But then and then it started evolving once we built this, because then I introduced it, I think, to you, and we put more pixels in the damn thing, and then then you know, Barnes was able to separate those pixels. So then all of a sudden it evolved into this other thing. Yeah, and now we're bouncing the light around the whole thing at all times when we. No,
it was great, because this I think was the low res version we started with at the beginning of the show. And again, this is Fixtures department too, just working with us with camera and all this, and then it turned into this kind of more high res version, which is 144 pixels of you know, an inch or a meter, 144 a meter.
Oh, and Camtech too. Camtech developing their
yes, and Camtech. Yeah, exactly. And Kayvon and all those guys, because the ones that you guys had on the prom was, you know, was really refined. And
3.0, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we could use this thing for like general color, or I remember, you know, a lot of times we just use it as, you know, we're either playing content through it, because like in the Italian restaurant, we were playing the police chase content through it and creating this, you know, the flare effect from like the police cop lights. But then I remember like we were using it in the where she goes and buys the hyena, and you know, there's you know, we wanted to add a flare that was kind of looking like it was off of fluorescence or something like that, and it was really a super versatile tool for us. And you know, so Scott could be able to go map it in on the console, and you know, it was we really used it on the show. It really worked well for kind of that level of Gotham.
It was kind of made for this show, to be honest with you.
Yeah, this is an example of it here in this still, like, just kind of on the sides where we had the cop car going, or the.
Well, the other thing too is that we used it in places where we didn't exactly, the sets didn't necessarily speak to the palette, so we would bleed in magenta in the shadow areas, or we'd bleed in, or Scott would mix. We would do blue on the top and bottom at like 20%, and then we'd bring in red at the left and right at 5 or 10%, or what. It got to that level of sort of detail, and we would just explore, and then when we saw something we liked, we'd go with it. Which was, it's nice to have as a tool for sure.
Somebody's asking, what was the main light level you guys wanted to maintain through the movie? Was the key light always like a 4 or something? That's a good question.
That's a good question. Well, I could say that I don't believe in key light necessarily, so we don't really measure key light. But I can say that I think we're always. It's hard to say. I think our LUT was heavy, so we probably used more light than we usually do because our LUT was heavy. It was probably the heaviest LUT I think I've ever used. And so 800 turned into 320 as far as I'm concerned. So our light levels are probably a lot higher than you would think looking at the movie. But, we're constantly, I could just say this, we wouldn't really try to shoot too deep. 4 is probably as deep as we'd go unless we were outside. And on our interiors, we're always around the 2 to 2.8 realm.
Yeah.
And with ND usually. With ND or Apollo.
Well, and it's like, I also remember that, one of the things that's always interesting is you're moving the white point of the camera, but then sometimes we'd be moving the ASA, depending on, slow it down a bit or something like that, depending kind of what we're trying to get out of it. This image is from because when we were in the Italian restaurant, the only space to put anybody was in the kitchen, which was also the area that the props was using for food prep. So everybody was jammed in there. It was, it was, it was great.
It was Friday.
Yeah, it was Friday. It was a Friday. Yeah.
That's right. Before I stuck into the cantina.
I think I was cooking steaks while I was doing the cues.
I think one of the last things we have is this roller rink set, which was, it's in the movie for like just at the beginning kind of, but it was a fun set. And this was actually the warehouse that they've had a warehouse set, which was we had used for, was it part of Anderson Street or something? I can't remember, but
it was the actual interior of the exterior of the park.
That's right. And they had, they put a roller rink in there, and, where Harley Quinn is in her, roller derby. And this was, this was the plot for it again. It was, we ended up adding some sky panels off this plot, and we had, soft ambient light boxes and then some movers too, and then practicals. So, whoops, go back one. This rig, I think this went in pretty fast, if I remember correctly, because I didn't even know if we were here for a full day. I think there might have been something else on this day too. But again, just going up and some top ambience that we had, and then what was good is the color contrast. I remember, Matty, that was something we talked a lot about. This is getting contrast through color and having these super hot, warm tungsten globes. I think we had 1,000 waters in there, and then the cooler overhead ambient. And I mean, it's a brief scene, but it worked out. They had a full brawl going on. I remember, I think people were throwing garbage and all that. That didn't make the film, but it was pretty funny.
No, it was fun. The thing I remember about that rig is that didn't we have to rig the boxes in 2 rows on each side? I think most of that is because we didn't really know if the light would be working inside out or outside in. So we had those 2 rows. I don't think we ever used them all at the same time. And in fact, we probably had cues to turn things on and off. But, like this image right here is kind of, I think our reference for this was old boxing matches, like at Olympic Auditorium, And having that tungsten feel was like the main focus overall. But then we really, because the movie was all about color contrast, then I think that the hybrid boxes were really the things we had to employ. I think that the color temperature actually had to be shoved down on the camera here because the hybrids only went to, I think, 7,000 degrees or 6,000 degrees.
Yeah,
so I think we had to probably play this at more like 3,500 rather than usual 4,500.
Yeah, I think we went to larger bulbs that we could dim down to warm them up a bit more.
Yeah.
So we put thousands in there. We had 500s in there. We went to thousands. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, but I mean, it was great because you had like these warm flares and highlights in the frame, and then it was kind of like this cooler feel overhead.
I wish the scene was longer. I actually really liked that one.
I know. It was a good scene.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pain in the ass. We had to crane everything in.
You're always, yeah.
So we had to get the perfect size. It was like very couture, a perfect size construction crane that could, sneak in and then lift the Techno or lift the Patriot car, and then get it out.
Yeah, that's right. You had the Patriot in there running around and all that. Yeah,
I wish we had behind the scenes on that because at one point we had the Patriot car in there and the crane. There wasn't a lot of space. I'm like, let's see if this is going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Across the beams.
Yeah. We have some car work here, which we did, which was, again, video panels. Like any show, this was about trying to figure out how we could do this, kind of on the at a cost-effective rate. And this slight amount of panels was enough to do the job. That coupled with some Asteras, and so we used, and when we were down on Anderson Street, we had shot plates that they were using to put on top of this, and then Scott was manipulating them. And I think you threw like some white in there, also white bars, a layer of white that could pass by. So we just had different highlights and stuff going on.
Yeah, just to help accent the street lights, or I guess when we shot this, we had sky panels on rooftops, so there was sort of that kind of thing.
Yeah, and so so we ended up with we'd play a clip, but Warner Brothers wasn't allowing that. So anyway, it's
this whole thing kind of happened quickly, right? I don't remember. This just kind of popped up all of a sudden and was like, hey, we're going to go to that stage and run media. And
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you kick the can down the road until it's like you got to fit it in right before a company moves. But what's interesting about this stuff is it depends on, you need a certain proximity from these video walls to have an effect, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes when just the physical distance of them, because they need to have a certain amount of light, compared to this, it has a physical effect on the size of the effect. What I mean by that is because the panels themselves are closer to the subject for light level, you end up the footage looks too fast. Your changes look too fast, so you almost have to either go bigger at the same speed and further back, which is pretty tough and expensive, or you could do you could shoot 48 on your plates, so you could shoot a little slower on your plates, so that you could slow that effect down in camera. So it's something I sort of learned. I think I learned it on Compton actually. And if you try to slow it down in the media engine, it's going to look steppy. So that's not even a possibility. Your source material has to be slower.
And then I know we had added these, on 20-foot pipe, just attached Astera tubes and just ran some pixel content through that too. So we could get like, those could just get duck down right on the edge of the frame. And
that was all with the inbox too, by the way. The media was, for those who want to know, that was content. Those were actual plate shots that we shot that at a different time. And we just took that content, put it on the inbox, and just ran the media across the panels. Yeah.
And it was the same. It was just 5mm row panels. I think we maybe had 16 or 20 panels total, to create these four links. I think they reached 16 feet long or something like that, or 12 feet long. Wasn't it tough? It was enough to get some great reflections and things like that, which was cool.
This technique is coming very, very more common in the business now. There's a lot of people doing this kind of thing, and they're taking it to other levels. Like
look at the volume.
Yeah,
they're shooting into it now.
Yeah, shooting into them, and they're syncing them up to the actual plates so that the reflections tie with the actual image. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And it's just some photos of everyone who's behind it and all. And there's so many more people who are involved with this thing. But yeah, I mean, I guess we could take. I've got a few questions here. This is kind of the end of it all. That's Harley Quinn's business card.
Oh, the business card.
Yeah. But yeah, somebody asked how much time does Scott get to program all this? Oof.
Not enough.
Not enough. Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
It really depends on. It actually depends on the set and where it falls in the schedule. To be honest with you.
Programming for films is like a combination of programming for theater and programming for a concert, like busking. You gotta keep track of everything you're doing per scene, like slate number and all that stuff, so you can play it again. So they can always say, "Hey, go back and do what you did when we shot The Master or whatever." But you also have to have the console laid out in a way where you can busk and do things on the fly quickly. So it's just a good combination. No, you don't ever get time to do it. It's hardly ever.
I mean, yeah, it's just always a challenge, and this is a great, the show had this was a really interesting set of challenges and a lot of fun because we definitely were stretching what we could come up with. I mean, and China and Charlie were always being able to support everything that we were talking about, and I mean, it was really fantastic that we could execute some of the stuff that we did. I don't know. Anybody have any closing thoughts? That's kind of the end of it.
I'll just answer a couple questions.
Yeah. Let's see. What do we got here?
People were asking, the color cons took up a couple of universes. Tommy's on the chat right now. Him and Jared are both in Jason Young. They know a lot about that stuff. Tommy knows a lot. But I think ColorCon was a couple of universes, and that was part of our truck package. So that traveled with us everywhere. So every location or every set we went to, the ColorCon information was already in the console so that we could just add them in and go with it. But I think they took a couple of universes, if I'm not mistaken.
Someone's asking about light levels. Just like, how do you know you have enough light on the set? I mean, again, this helps when we have a good working relationship, so we kind of have an idea of, I mean, we all know each other pretty well, so we know, and also a lot of testing. So we kind of had an idea kind of what our base foot candle level was. I still very much am a fan of foot candles and a meter, like we were talking about earlier, because it's just a way of just, knowing where you're at, because it's easy to go down rabbit holes if I find it for myself, if I'm just looking at a monitor all the time. But I knew that, like, on this thing, if we had 15 foot candles on something, we were in a pretty good spot. I think it was what it was in this. And and again, it's like what Maddie said earlier, what we don't really have a thing that's called a key light, because there's so many different places where, we'll set an exposure, but where faces are lit, it's always, it's a lot of underexposure and things like that and highlights in the background. So it's not like we're really looking for a certain level for a face as far as more like a traditional key light.
We're always kind of striving for contrast. I mean, it's contrast through density and it's contrast through color. But it's softer, and it's a struggle for light quality at all times. So,
Maddie, somebody asked you if you had any theatrical lighting background or during school or anything. Did you do anything like that?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. It's fun to do stage work, though. It becomes interesting. But this was an interesting movie because you're taking the skill set of live performance and you're incorporating it into a narrative piece because of the nature of the show. And I think it might be the first time I've ever really done that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Someone asked about previs. Lighting previs, I do use Vision, but I didn't do a lot of that on this show. Any previs I really do is just sort of like rigging purposes through Vectorworks, just so the team can see where things are going to hang and stuff. But I have used Vision for some things. Like Iron Man 2, we did some stuff where pre-program. Vision's really good for pre-programming moving lights and stuff for for like performance lighting, but for movie lighting,
The Stark Expo.
Yeah, Stark Expo. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't really work so well for movie lighting because of all the fluidity.
No.
Certainly, if you've got some element that's going to always, Stark Expo, some sort of thing like that. Definitely.
I would imagine one day it will get there, but it's not there now.
Someone's asking how large is the crew for the data team. I mean, it started off with the concept of maybe a few people, and they had like 10 guys or 12 guys or 12 people at one thing. And
we had one main systems guy, which was Jared, and then Jared would divvy out, because Jared had to juggle a lot of different locations at one time, and so he can't be everywhere at the same time. So Jason Young was a guy, Jason Lord was a guy, JB was another guy. He had several people, and then under them, just 3 or 4 other techs working with them. So it was very much like a rigging crew, but for data in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Tana. What are your other things when you think about this movie? What are the things that come to mind? I just can't,
It was kind of a throwdown, like every day. It seems like once we got the ball going, it just didn't stop. It was one of those things that you either fed off of that energy or you got run over.
It sounds like every single time.
Yeah,
sounds like every single time. But I have to say that if there was, were you looking back on it, because it was a challenge at every turn. It's like that, it's just that normal mixture of anxiety moving into next week, but then like getting really good results. I mean, we were, there was just a really good cocktail to make the cinematography of this film work from a lighting and camera movement and post-production sort of standpoint. And like the images are the collection of a lot of different elements working at the same time. And when I look at it, it's really for me, it's probably my favorite superhero movie I've done, in terms of the look of it. And there's things we did here that I would take for something else, because there's some really interesting sort of mixes, things that work together, like light level wise, smoke wise, color, live grade. There's a lot of things achieved in the movie, I think. That are really things to remember, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. Well, that was
like Catholic Mass.
Yeah, I know. That was like 2.5 hours.
That's the longest I've spent indoors.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, everyone, thank you so much. Matty's Instagram is Libatique, his last name. That's right. Yeah. And you guys, since he's got his quarantine time, he's been going through all of his old hard drives and posting all sorts of great photos from. Man, those some trips down memory lane there.
I got more to come.
Oh, good. And Tana is 8 Point Grip. That's her company's name. And Scott Barnes' Instagram is iLight2000. And I'm Lux Lighting. So I just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming out. And thanks to Matty and Tana and Scott for spending time on this today. It was really great. It's good to see each other virtually.
Thanks, Jake. Thank you, Jake.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming, everybody, to How the Sausage Was Made.
Yeah, how the sausage.
Thanks, Jake and Phoebe. Thank you so much.
And Phoebe,
guys, you guys rock. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All
Thanks
right.
for everybody.
All right, guys.
See you.
Thank you. See ya.